Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto wasn't the only one born the night of the Kyuubi attack. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Konoha was in ruins, buildings destroyed or burning, corpses cluttered the rubble. People had never known what had hit them when the Kyuubi no Yoko appeared out of a cloud of smoke and began to devastate the village without mercy in a bloodlust-filled rage. Now yellow spiked glowing chains that entangled its large body as it gnashed and growled at its captors far from the village in a large clearing in the woods bound the mighty Biju. Around the clearing a large dome had been erected, its structure made of the same chains that held back the Kyuubi, while their energy created walls between them to keep anyone outside back while the events inside took place. The chains were coming from a single woman inside the dome. She had fair skin, violet eyes and long crimson-red hair down to the base of her back with should-length strands that framed both sides of her face with a black clip that parts her hair to the left. She was wearing a white high-collared, sleeveless blouse under a green long, loose-fitting dress with a wristband on her left wrist and standard shinobi sandals. Behind her was a man with slightly tanned skin, bright blue eyes, and spiky blonde hair with bangs framing his face. His attire was a blue long-sleeved tracksuit with 2 bands on both of his sleeves, a green flak jacket, with 3 pouches on each side of the chest, a neck guard, extra padding over the shoulders, which is fastened on by steel buttons, and a zipper down the middle, a blue hitai on his head with a leaf symbol engraved on it over it. He also wore a short-sleeved long white haori that was decorated by red flame-like motifs on the edges with the kanji for Yondaime Hokage written vertically downwards, closed in the front by a thin, orange rope over this attire. But both were not going to stay in this world for long, as both stood in front of an altar holding back one of the Kyuubi's claws. However, they had both been pierced through their midsections by the sharp claw that had been heading to the sleeping forms on the altar. They were 2 sleeping babies, one wrapped in orange with messy blonde hair with 3 whisker marks on his cheeks. The other with messy crimson-red hair which was finer than the first's, wrapped in a red blanket a shade darker than his hair. Behind the pair holding back the claw was translucent gaunt spectre with a demonic visage. It is much larger than an average human, possessing long, shaggy white hair, from which 2 red horns protrude, with a mouth full of sharp, jagged teeth, and a very long, almost serpentine tongue, and purple-colored skin. It is draped in a large white garments, and carries a set of prayer beads in its left hand and holding a tanto in its right hand, now looking down at the scene. The man spoke. Kushina, I'm almost out of time. He spoke to the woman with blood dripping from the sides of his mouth in obvious pain. It's time for the 8 trigram seal. I'll add our chakra so we can speak with Naruto later on. Please say your goodbyes. The woman, Kushina, looked down on the sleeping babies and smiled as best she could in her obvious state. Naruto Kenta, don't be picky about your foods, eat lots both of you, so you can grow up big. Take baths every day, and stay warm. And Kenta, don't let Naruto stay up late at night, you'll both need your sleep. Make friends, you don't need a lot of them, just a few that you can really trust. I'm not one to talk, but do your best in school and ninjutsu. Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, so don't feel down if you're not good at something. Help each other, that's what brothers are for. Respect your teachers and seniors at the academy. Oh, and don't forget the 3 shinobi vices. Be especially careful when lending or borrowing money. Make sure to save the money you earn from missions. Don't drink any alcohol until you're 21. Drinking is bad for your health, so do so moderately. And as for women, I'm a woman myself, so I don't know much about this, but there are only men and women in this world, so it's okay if you're interested in a woman, just try not to go after bad ones, try to find ones just like mom. Speaking of vices, watch out for Jiraiya-sensei, you know. Naruto, you will face a lot of pain and suffering in your life. Believe in yourself and rely on your brother. In the end, family is all you really have. Kenta, look out for your little brother and protect him. Believe in each other and believe in your dreams. But most of all, believe that your dreams will come true. She said as tears started to come to her eyes. There are so many more things I want to share with you both. I wish I could stay with you both longer. I love you both so much. I'm sorry, Minato, I spoke for too long. She finished an apology to the man behind her, as tears streamed down her cheeks, who just smiled lightly and shook his head. Don't worry. Naruto, Kenta, my advice to you both as your father is the same as your chatty mother just said with one extra. Naruto, listen to your big brother, and Kenta, look out for your little brother. I'm so sorry neither of us could be there to watch you both grow up, but this is all we can offer you. Minato said as he peered around Kushina to the sleeping forms on the altar before smiling contently as he closed his eyes and spoke. Hack Fuin as a bright light engulfed them. Scene break. Several hours later, in the tallest building in Konoha, the Hokage Tower. A man in his late 50s sat holding the oldest of the babies in his arms while the younger blonde lay in the crib in front of them. The man was of short stature compared to most, his tan skin starting to develop wrinkles, has 2 lines running vertically under the outer corners of each eye, and a few liver spots under his left eye. His hair was dark brown with a spiked upward, and had a messy dark brown goatee. He was Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure, respected by all who knew him, and revered for his 2 titles, the Professor and Shinobi no Kami. Now Hiruzen sat looking down at the babe in his arms, and the small child looking back up at him, his blue eyes innocent and carefree. Hiruzen could only give a small smile to the child as he held him with a small sigh. Barely 1 day old in this world, and you and your brother have been through so much, the deaths of both your parents, your younger brother becoming the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, Hiruzen whispered as he looked down to the child. As a small frown came to his face, the civilians calling for both your heads out of sheer ignorance, Danzo asking to take your brother for his program, both of which I will never allow to happen. Hiruzen said as the small babe wrapped his fingers around one of his own, making him smile. You're a fighter, just like your father and mother. Hiruzen said before taking a sad breath in the memory of his former successor and wife now passed. I'm sorry, no child or children should grow up missing a parent, let alone both. I'm not sure what the future holds that awaits you both, but know this, I will do everything in my power to make sure you both live happy lives and grow up just like your parents would want. I couldn't face Minato or Kushina in the afterlife if I didn't. Hiruzen finished with a small smile as the babe's eyes started to close as the Sandaime Hokage stood up. Moving to the cot in front of them, he placed the small babe down into it right next to his blonde younger sibling who was already sleeping. With a smile, Hiruzen fixed their blankets before watching the eldest drift off to sleep. But whatever happens, I know you'll both be fine. Time skipped 10 years. The sun shone bright over Konoha as the shops began to open and the civilians started their days. It had been 10 years since that night of the Kyuubi attack, 10 years since the village had known that horror. While the village had recovered and mourned its losses, there was still an air of hatred about the village, though it was buried deep down but often flared up. Its focus was on one or both of the only 2 occupants of the twin-joined apartments in a rundown apartment complex in the red light district of the poorer part of Konoha. The building itself was recently restored on order of the Hokage to house its 2 newest occupants, who shared the twin-joined apartments. The building itself was a U-shape with the joined apartments on the top 2nd floor on the left side of the building. The apartments are identical clones of each other except for the different paint colors. One had a warm white paint and the other a warm gray, both with wooden flooring in an open space plain design, with kitchen, bedroom and living room all in one space, and the bathrooms were on opposing sides. The kitchen spaces were plain with metal and hardwood worktops with a plastic coating finish. Both had sinks and cookers, though only the second apartment looked to be in use. In the bedroom of the first, a head of spiky red hair can be seen under the plain white covers. The bed was a solid wood frame that looked recently new. Beside the bed, a digital alarm clock went off. It was a rectangular metal clock with a black screen with bright red numbers and a push switch on top. As the clock turned to 8, it started beeping over and over again, making the occupant of the bed groan as he turned. The redhead opened his eyes, showing the cerulean blue orbs, and squints at the light as he reaches out from below the cover and whacks the alarm clock, silencing it before running his hand over his face to wipe the sleep away. Pushing himself up into a sitting position, the cover falls from the redhead's torso, showing he's shirtless and was quite lean, not extremely muscular, but he didn't have much baby fat, and there was some muscle definition showing he was quite active. But there were some light scarring from what looked like knife wounds on his arms and a few on his chest, but all looked to have healed long ago. With a yawn, the redhead got out of the bed and stretched his arms up as he closed his eyes. All he was wearing was a pair of black baggy pajama bottoms and no socks. He was roughly 4 feet 9 inches, which is tall for his age. Opening his eyes again, now slightly more awake, he started over to the door joining the apartments, and gave it a rough hard knock. Naruto, time to get up, I'll be in to make breakfast in 10 minutes. The redhead called through the door, getting a mumbled response. Hearing the response, the redhead turned and headed to the bathroom. Walking in the bathroom was a simple square room, enough space for a small shower, sink and a toilet. The tiles on the ground and wall were plain white and stopped halfway up the wall where a white paint started. Turning on the sink, the boy filled it halfway before dunking his head in the freezing cold water before pulling his head out, his eyes wide and hair dripping wet as he panted from the sudden burst of cold as he reached for the towel, now wide awake. Finishing drying his face, the boy looked himself over in the mirror. His face was somewhat narrow with a curved chin with softened features. His red hair was messy and in spikes with long bangs on the sides of his face, making his cerulean blue eyes stand out even more. Walking back into the bedroom to get dressed, the boy couldn't help but be thankful for the new apartments he and his younger brother were living in now, after they were both kicked out of the orphanage a week ago. They had started to live on the streets, but were found on the first night by a mask-wearing shinobi in the shape of a dog's head with spiked-up silver hair. He had brought them to the Hokage and they had spent the night in his office, and the next day he had gotten them both these apartments after the orphanage refused to take them back. Their reason being the pranks the younger of the two played and the fights the older one got into defending the younger one. As he finished getting dressed by pulling on a white t-shirt with a red band going from his right shoulder to his left hip, he lifted a black strip of cloth and tied it around his head, keeping his spiky hair up and out of his face. Giving a final yawn and stretch, the boy walked over to the door and knocked again. "Ready or not, Naruto, I'm coming in," he said as he turned the handle and opened the door. As he walked in, he smirked, seeing the yawning and stretching form of his younger brother coming to greet him. He had bright blonde hair and a rather chubby face with 3 whisker birthmarks on either cheek. As he finished yawning, he opened his eyes, showing the same cerulean blue eyes that his brother shared. He was wearing a pair of light blue pajama bottoms and white shirt with a black nightcap on his head. Seeing his brother, the blonde smiled, Morning Kentani. Kenta smiled, giving a small chuckle. Morning Ototo. You go and wake yourself up and I'll get breakfast on the go, he said, shaking his head. With a groggy nod, Naruto turned and walked to the bathroom on the other side of the apartment, while Kenta went into the kitchen area and started going through the cupboards. Opening one after another, he started to frown. Out of food again, and there's no telling what they'll charge us this time if I go now, Kenta thought as he opened the last cupboard and sighed as he took out the content. 2 instant ramen tubs and sighed. Breakfast of champions, he thought rhetorically as he put the water in and put them in the microwave before sitting down and sighing. Naruto came out of the bathroom and saw his brother sighing and walked over. What's the matter, Nichan? He asked, hating to see his big brother worried. Kenta shook his head with a sigh. We're out of food again. I'm going to have to go see Gigi and see if he can have our groceries sorted by other means. I swear that girl is overcharging us for our food, Kenta said as Naruto sat down. I'm sure Gigi can help, he always does, Naruto said as he tried to think of a way to brighten the mood before smiling. Hey, do you want to help me prank some guys today? I've got loads of ideas, Naruto said, exaggerating by throwing his arms out wide, making Kenta smirk before he shook his head. Sorry Ototo, maybe later when I get back from seeing Gigi about our food situation and some other things, Kenta said with a small smile. This got Naruto's attention. What other things? Naruto asked, curious as to what his older brother was going to be seeing their grandfather figure about. Kenta smirked. I'm going to see if Gigi can help me start my shinobi training early. I'm sure he has some books he can lend me so I can start. Maybe he'll even take me on as his student if I ask him. He trained the 3 Sannin and they were the strongest shinobi in the village. To be taught by him, or them, would be amazing, Kenta said, his mood brighten up. Naruto blinked, seeing his brother's enthusiasm. But we've got 2 years before we start the academy, Nichan. What's the rush? Kenta smirked as he reached over and rustled his brother's hair. You can never be too prepared when it comes to things like this, Ototo. Remember that, he said with a smirk as his brother pushed his hand off his head and pouted. You always act so much older than me, even though there is only 5 minutes between us. Naruto pouted at his brother, treating him like a little kid. Kenta smirked. Bigger brothers always grow up quicker. They have to in order to look out for their Ototos, he said as the microwave finally dinged and Kenta got up to get the food. Taking the bowls out, he put them on the table and handed Naruto a pair of chopsticks. They pulled back the lids and Naruto inhaled the smell like it was a sweet perfume. Aya, food of Kami-sama for breakfast. Is there any better way to start the day? Naruto smiled as he took in the scene. Kenta chuckled as he shook his head at his brother's words. Well, I'm not sure about ramen for breakfast, but it will do for today, he said as they put their hands together and bowed, Itadakimasu, before starting to eat. Scene break. In the tallest building in Kanahigakure, the Hokage Tower, was the Hokage's office. The room was comfortable, meant for the Hokage to be able to go about his duties as such. The far back of the room was rounded with multiple windows allowing light to fill the room. In the center of those windows was the logger desk of the Hokage with stacks of paperwork on one side. On the opposite end of the room were 2 sofas with bookshelves filled with many books that have been read behind them. Behind the desk sat a tired and weary Hiruzen Sarutobi, his face showing his age more and more with every passing year. The last 10 years had taken its toll on the elderly Hokage. He had hoped to no longer be there, as it was over 10 years ago he had named his successor, but sadly he had no choice after the Kyuubi attack and the death of that successor but to retake his position. It was the only way he could protect his successor's legacy. Had he not, he was sure they'd have been dead by now, or worse for young Naruto, turned into a mindless puppet for wars, as had been the suggestion of his war advisor when Naruto's status had been told to the council. Now his days had been filled with more paperwork than he ever had before. The majority of the paperwork was all from the council. The civilian side was always trying to scrape more power from him or slip laws by him that were just too ridiculous to even comprehend. Sometimes Hiruzen cursed his second sensei for ever creating the council. He agreed the civilians should have a say as it was their village as well. But to quote the Nara clan, they made things more troublesome than it needed to be. His paperwork pile wouldn't even be a tenth of what it was now if it wasn't for the civilian council. He couldn't even remember the last chance he had to train, and he knew it was starting to show. He was grateful for any distraction he could get from the bane of his existence, and this morning that distraction came in the form of a small hand knocking on his office door. Come in, Hiruzen said as he stamped another denied on another useless law attempt. He looked up when the door opened and the young Kenta came in, smiling, seeing his grandfather figure. Ah, Kenta-kun, come in. What brings you here so early in the morning? Kenta smiles, closing the door. I thought now would be a good time to come and see you and assumed you'd be less busy in the early morning, he said before eyeing the paperwork. Guess I was wrong. I can come back later if you'd like. Hiruzen smiled at Kenta's clever thinking but shook his head. No, that's fine, my boy. I could use the distraction from this paperwork, Hiruzen said as he lifted his pipe. How are you and Naruto faring in your new apartments? I've been meaning to come by, but this paperwork has kept me so busy I can barely get away from my desk these days. Kenta grinned. The apartments are great, Gigi. Thanks again for them. It's so much better to have our own space rather than back at the orphanage when it was just the 2 of us to that small room and single bed. Hiruzen chuckled at Kenta's happiness. That's good to hear, my boy. Now what have you come by so early for? I assume it must be important. You're normally with Naruto every day like you two were joined at the hip. Kenta smirked, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. Nothing gets by you, Gigi, he said with a nervous chuckle. I was wondering if I could ask you to arrange for mine and Naruto's groceries to be collected by someone else from now on? The sudden request made Hiruzen quirk an eyebrow as he took his pipe from his mouth. And why would you ask for that, Kenta-kun? If you're nervous about going alone, I'm sure I could have someone sent with you until you're sure of how to do it yourself? Hiruzen suggested, thinking he might just have been nervous, but blinked again when Kenta shook his head. That's not it, Gigi, Kenta said with a small frown. It's just that I've noticed something. The last time I went to the shop, the girl at the till charged me way more than what the bill should have been for the food. I made sure to check the prices before I took them to the till, and the looks the girl was giving me and Naruto, they were just cold and full of hate. Hiruzen frowned hearing that and cursed in his head. I was afraid of this. There hasn't been an incident like the first since I put that AMB unit on them. But it appears that they've found another way to abuse these two. Well, that's stopping now. Hiruzen thought as he sighed. I see. Well, I don't see why we can't arrange that for you. Hiruzen said as he gave Kenta a small smile and took out a notepad from his desk drawer. Come and give me a list of all the things that you need and I'll have someone pick them up for you and bring them here while we talk. The longer we talk, the less time I have to work on this accursed paperwork, hee. Kenta bowed in thanks as he came over and started listing all the things they needed from the shop. After 5 minutes, Hiruzen nodded and pulsed his chakra into a seal on his desk, and the door to his office opened as his secretary came in. Hiruzen handed her the list. Please have someone sent to purchase those items from one of the local shops and have them brought here, and arrange for it to be done once a week. The secretary took the list and nodded. As she started to leave, she shot a disgusted glare at Kenta, who returned it in kind. Hiruzen caught the secretary's glare and scowled at her. And when you're done with that, you can clear out your desk. Your services are no longer required, he said, scowl still on his face, shocking the secretary, who could only nod in acceptance and leave. Hiruzen rubbed his brow. What is this village coming to? He asked himself mentally. As the door closed, Kenta couldn't help but smirk and turned to his grandfather figure, smiling. Thanks again, Gigi. This will really help. Hiruzen smiled. You're most welcome, Kenta. Always come to me if there's anything you need. I'll be more than happy to help you. Kenta nodded. Actually, Gigi, there is one more thing you could help me with, if it's not too much trouble. Hiruzen chuckled. It's fine, my boy. What is it that I can do for you? Kenta grinned, hoping he wouldn't be turned down. I was hoping you'd be able to lend me a copy of some scrolls on beginner's ninjutsu, taijutsu, and chakra control. The sudden request shocked Hiruzen for a moment as he blinked hearing it. My boy, why would you want such things? You don't start the academy for another 2 years? Kenta nodded. I know, Gigi. It's just I want to get a head start on the basics so I don't fall behind. I'm thinking that all the students from clans will have training from their parents before going, so I'll already be at a disadvantage. I want to lessen that as much as possible. Hiruzen looked at Kenta, shocked at his logical thinking, and couldn't help but smile. It's almost as if it's Minato standing in front of me defending his reasoning. They're so much alike it's almost scary. Hiruzen thought before nodding. Very well, Kenta-kun, I'd be more than happy to help you, he said before getting up. Hiruzen walked over to the bookshelves and started scanning their contents before pulling out 2 scrolls. Here we go, he said as he turned and handed them to Kenta. That first one is on the 3 types of chakra control exercises for beginners. I'd recommend starting with the leaf balancing exercise before moving on to tree climbing and water walking, Hiruzen recommended. The second is on the 3 basic ninjutsu all students learn at the academy: Bunshin, Kawarimi, and Henge. These 3 are the fundamental basics that every shinobi must know, that's why the academy teaches them. Hiruzen continued explaining. Now as for taijutsu, that would be better studied under a sensei. That way you can discover a style which is suited to your own personality. And it just so happens that we have a taijutsu expert here in the village. He is a master of the Goken, strong fist, taijutsu style, and is fluent in over 30 other forms of hand-to-hand combat. I believe he would be best to teach you when the time comes. Kenta couldn't help but shiver. Gigi, he wouldn't be the guy I've seen running around the village screaming about the flames of youth, is he? Hiruzen's sweat dropped. That would be him. His name is Mike Guy, and while he may be a little eccentric, make that completely insane, but he is also one of the most hard-working jonin this village has, and would be the best option in learning any taijutsu style. Kenta nodded, understanding his grandfather figure's logic, but couldn't help but think that his future taijutsu lessons might prove to be rather strange. Then another thought crossed Kenta's mind. Gigi, where do I go to get other jutsu? After I've learned these 3, that is. Hiruzen smiled. Common jutsu that many our shinobi use can be found at the shinobi library. Clans have their own personal libraries in their compounds, so the shinobi library is for non-clan shinobi to go to, or for clan shinobi to research jutsu that might better their clan styles. Sadly, I'm afraid you won't be able to enter, as you need to be a registered shinobi of Konoha to do so. Kenta frowned, hearing that he had really hoped to go there after he had learned these 3 jutsu he had been given. Seeing Kenta frown, Hiruzen smirked slightly as if reading his mind. Don't worry, my boy. When the time comes that you need more jutsu to learn, I'll draft you up a permit to allow you to enter the library, and I'll even assign you a training ground to practice in, as long as you can show me you've learned all 3 of those jutsu I've given you, that is. That way I'll know you can handle the jutsu in the library. Kenta smiled again, hearing that, realizing what his grandfather figure was doing. He was giving him incentive to learn the academy basic jutsu before the others, so he wouldn't take on something that was above his level. Thanks, Gigi. This will be perfect. I have to get stronger and be ready. I can't be defenseless not when I have to protect Naruto. Kenta thought as he smiled, thanks Gigi. I'll get these jutsu down no problem. But I was wondering if you could spare someone to show me the ropes and how to start, even if they're just out of the academy. I just want a hand to make sure I'm not making a fool out of myself by doing it wrong. Hiruzen smiled. That's a very clever thing to ask Kenta, he said in praise before thinking for a moment. Perhaps I could kill two birds with one stone with this, at least for now. She's been refusing to take anyone for the past 2 years, not wanting a genin team. Perhaps a single student would be better, Hiruzen smirked. And I believe I know just the person to help you, he said before snapping his finger, and an ANBU guard appeared to his left. Please fetch Enko Mitarashi for me, he ordered before the ANBU bowed and disappeared via Shunshin. Kenta blinked at the speed of how things were going. Wow, that was easy. I knew I would get someone, but I never thought it'd be so quickly. I hope whoever this Enko is can help me. Kenta thought to himself, only to be pulled from his shock by a knock at the office's door. Come in, called Hiruzen to whoever it was. The door opened and 2 people came in. One was an ANB wearing a boar mask holding multiple bags of groceries. The second was a young woman in a white high-collar shirt and black mesh armor over the top of it, wearing a brown skirt with a purple side pouch and black shinobi sandals, with white wrappings around her left thigh under a black kunai pouch. The ANBU set the groceries down beside Kenta before bowing to Hiruzen and disappearing into a swirl of leaves. The girl gave Kenta a curious glance before she stood in front of the Hokage's desk and bowed. You sent for me, Hokage-sama, she said, taking her formal tone. This was the professor and Shinobi no Kami. You showed him respect. Hiruzen nodded and gave them both a smile that for some reason sent a shiver down both their spines as both gulped, unsure of why they felt a little worried about what was going to happen. Hiruzen chuckled slightly. Glad to know I still got it, he though before smiling again. Enko, I have a long-term assignment for you with continuous pay for as long as it continues, given that it's non-optional at this stage, the professor informed her, making her frown somewhat. Kenta raised an eyebrow at the statement. So he's making teaching me a mission, and a non-optional one at that? Why? Hasn't she taught anyone before? She doesn't even look 17. Kenta thought, as he looked to the girl, curious as to whom she was exactly. Hiruzen then cleared his throat. Kenta, this is Enko Mitarashi. Enko, this is Kenta Uzumaki, your new student, Hiruzen said with a smile. That was when Enko's eyes widened in realization of why this mission was non-optional for her. Hokage-sama, are you sure this is wise, saddling me with this gaki? Enko asked, trying to be as polite as possible about it. He doesn't even look old enough to be out of dippers yet. What exactly do you want me to teach him? How to use crayons? Enko asked, as she couldn't help glancing at Kenta with a smirk. That was when Kenta's eye twitched and a smile came to his face that was similar to the one Enko glanced at him with. Firstly, it's very nice to meet you as well, Mitarashi-san. But I feel like I must point out, should you call me that again, you will find one of those kunai in your holder shoved up somewhere on your person that you would find most unpleasant. Or maybe you wouldn't, given how you look. The sudden outburst made both Hiruzen and Enko blink, looking at Kenta. Hiruzen was shocked. Kenta had always been polite and well-mannered, always keeping himself calm. There was a time he actually, though there was some hyuga in him to be so stiff at times, to see him actually react like that was a revelation, and one that brought a cheerful smile to the old man's mental face. And there's the Kushina in him. She was never one for taking lip from anyone. Oh, these two will make quite the pair if they get into it. Hiruzen smirked. Enko blinked, looking at Kenta before a smirk of approval came to her, and she laughed. Haha, that's some mouth you got on you there, Gaki. Call me Enko. And don't bother with the sensei honorific. I'm waiting to see what you're like first before I even think about making it official, and that, she added as she held out her hand to him. Hiruzen smiled, seeing them getting on. Well, seeing that you're acquainted now, I might as well give you the full assignment, Enko, he said before he cleared his throat and took out a mission scroll. Enko, you are to be Kenta's instructor for the next 2 years in the shinobi arts. You'll still be doing missions outside of the village every once in a while when needed, but when able you are to instruct Kenta in his training for the academy. What he wants to learn is up to him. It seems he already has some ideas in mind and will need directions. I recommend you add physical conditioning to the agenda before you start anything more physical. Hiruzen continued as he wrote everything he said down. I will be arranging for Guy to meet with you both when he gets back from his mission so that he might help Kenta choose a taijutsu style that he can begin learning. Enko, as a newly appointed chunin, passing on knowledge is also a vital role. I expect a monthly report on Kenta's progress. Pay for the assignment will be made weekly. It is a B-rank assignment, so pay will be distributed as fit as it is continuous. Training expenses will be covered, so be sure to keep receipts. And if he still requires extra instruction after the 2 years, the assignment will be extended on request. Hiruzen finished as he signed the scroll, making the assignment official as he handed it to her. Enko took the scroll with a nod of acceptance and understanding as she stowed it in her side pouch for review later as Kenta grins. Hiruzen grins also. Alright, now that's sorted, Kenta, you'll need some staring gear, kunai and shuriken for now, Hiruzen said as he started filling out another scroll. The tower has a large armory, so instead of buying them I'll just assign you a set of each to get you started. You'll have to buy your own once you start the academy. It also has a wide assortment of weapons down there. I'd recommend you pick one to try and learn. Most shinobi have something that makes them unique in battle. Perhaps you'll find one down there that you'll like. he said as he handed the second scroll to Anko. Give that to the girl at the armory desk and she'll see you're sorted. Now go on, the sooner you start the sooner you'll grow stronger. Kenta grins as he picks up the bags. Thanks Gigi, he said as he and Anko began to leave, bags split between them. Hiruzen smirks. Anytime Kenta, anytime, he says as he watches the pair leave and the door closed before he sighed. The council will kick up a storm about this if they find out, but to hell with them. I'm not the Hokage for nothing, he thinks before looking back to the pile of paperwork and glares at it. Alright you son of a bitch, round 2, here we go, he thinks before starting in again. As Kenta and Anko start to walk away, they pass an ANBU in a weasel mask with black hair coming through the hallway heading to the Hokage's office. As he and Kenta pass each other, Kenta stops, and he feels a chill go down his spine as he turns to look at the back of the ANBU as he enters the Hokage's office, and he feels himself shiver again. Anko turns to see Kenta has stopped. Hey Gaki, what's the matter? She asked, wondering why he'd stopped. Turning back to Anko, Kenta shook his head. Nothing Anko-san, it's just I have a feeling that something bad is going to happen, he said as they started walking again. Kenta unable to shake the feeling that this day was the start of many things that would shape the future. Scene break. Anko and Kenta walked down to the basement of the Hokage Tower where the armory was located. Entering the room, Kenta's eyes widened considerably seeing the room. Racks upon racks of weapons of all shapes and sizes, from exotic swords to spearheads. The walls had heavier weapons mounted on them, maces, axes, huge swords. There were weapons of all kinds down here. The sheer number of them astounded him. Wow, this is way more than I expected. Where do all these come from? Kenta asked in awe. Anko smirked. From other shinobi, of course. The village has its fair number of blacksmiths as well. Anytime a shinobi comes head to head against an enemy shinobi in battle, the victor usually takes whatever they can from the other in order to better the village and learn other villages' secrets. There's a whole division on solely experimenting and testing foreign weaponry that are brought in to discover their secrets. Once all the secrets have been learned, the weapons are sent here along with all the notes on how they can be used. It's up to the shinobi who decide to take them on to learn how to use them. Usually it's only chunin of above who are given weapons out of here. Hokage-sama must think you're something special to allow you to have one when you're just starting your training. Kenta nods as he looks up at all the weapons and his mind racing with all the ideas of what he could choose for his weapon. Anko smirks, seeing the look in his eyes like a normal kid in a candy or toy store. Well, to Kenta this probably was a toy store, an incredibly dangerous toy store. She giggled sadistically to herself, wondering what weapon the kid would choose to make his own, and decided to let him run loose. Alright Gaki, I'll head to the desk and get your standard equipment. You go have a look around and see what you can spot that you like. I'll catch up with you in a few. Anko smirked when she saw his grin grow before he took off down the aisle like a right-on jutsu, making Anko chuckle again. Ah, to be that young and excitable. That kid's going to be one hell of a shinobi when he's older if he's this excited now. With Kenta walked down the aisles of weapons, his eyes wide looking up at them all, sort of all different sizes racked on the wall, or mounted separately higher up. There was a mass of maces and long-handled weapons against one of the wall, making Kenta stop and look at them. He remembered the old man had said he practiced using a bow staff as his weapon of choice one time, and had even signed the monkey contract to that extent. The Sarutobi clan even had its own bow fighting style, which Kenta had said sounded awesome. But the more he thought about what his grandfather figure had said, most shinobi have something that makes them unique in battle. Perhaps you'll find one down there that you'll like. Had made him reluctant to choose a bow. If he was going to be unique, he had to choose something else. While it would have been nice to have learned how to use it as his student, it wouldn't make him unique. Turning away from the bow staffs, Kenta headed down another aisle that caught his eye. The entire side of the wall had different pull-out boxes in it. Each looked to be for a separate weapon, and on the front was notice of the weapon's name and origins. As Kenta kept walking down, he stopped when he saw something that caught his eye. A label that read unknown origins, making Kenta blink as he pulled it out and took off the lid. Inside the box was a very strange-looking weapon of sorts. It was clearly a sword by looking at the handle, but its body was broken up into multiple connecting parts. The handle was broken into 10 segments, each part with a rough leather outer wrapping, but the blade looked to be made up of over 100 parts, each of which were connected by a strange extending ball joint. The end of the handle had a large metal ring with 2 smaller ones hanging off it, and the tip of the blade came to a curved point like an arrowhead. Lifting the handle out of the box to examine it, Kenta gripped the blade slightly, and his eyes widened when all the connection on the blade and handle reacted and connected together in an instant as it took on the form of a solid sword. It was just over 1.5 meters in length, with no guard and a double-edged blade with a clear bevel up the middle of the blade where the segmented joints were clearly visible. Turning the blade so the light glimmered off the blade's edges, Kenta was in awe. It was heavy but not overly so, and it felt right in his hands. As he examined it, footsteps approached him from behind before Anko's voice broke the silence. See anything you like, Gaki? She asked, coming up behind him, seeing him admiring the sword. Kenta nodded. This, he said as he tilted the blade slightly as she looked it over. Anko quirked an eyebrow looking at the sword before she reached into the box and took out the booklet on the blade's details and started thumbing through it. Interesting. Says here its origins are unknown, that it was found on mission with no direct village links. The blades and connecting links are all chakra metal, so you'll be able to run your chakra through it later. Talk about an expensive piece. Whoever lost this must be kicking themselves still. Chakra metal ain't cheap. Kenta looked the blade up and down again with a newer admiration and grinned. I'll take it, he said with determination, making Anko smirk. You bet your ass you will. But that thing's going to take more than 2 years to learn how to use properly. There's no style as far as I know on this type of sword, so you'll have to make your own. You up for that? Anko asked with a smirk, wanting to see Kenta's reaction. Kenta grinned. Like you said, you can bet your ass I am. I'll make it all my own. Anko smirked. I think I'm starting to like you, Gaki, she said before turning. Now come on, we need to get this assigned to you before we drop off your shopping and then get you some new clothes. You can't train in civilian clothing. It will be shredded in the first hour. Anko smirked as Kenta shivered, unsure what they would be doing that would shred his clothing. Scene break. Back in the double apparent that Kenta and Naruto shared, Kenta and Anko set the bags down on the tabletop as Anko started looking around the place. Nice digs you got here, Gaki. You live here with anyone else? Anko asked, looking around. Kenta nodded as he started putting stuff away. Yep, me and my Ototo. We're twins, but you wouldn't know it by looking at us. I have red hair and he has blonde. After a few minutes, Kenta had finished putting the shopping away and looked to the other equipment Anko had picked him up, 3 kunai and half a dozen shuriken. Each were razor sharp. He picked up one of the kunai and held it in his hand, weighing it, and frowned doing so. It was heavy in his hand. Anko noticed him weighing the kunai and smirked. It will be heavy for someone not used to holding one. You'll get used to it in no time, she said, standing up from the table chair. Kenta nodded as he set the kunai down. I never did like how these were designed. No guards and perfect for quick slashes, but not much else. I guess I'll have my sword for those kinds of fights. Anko shrugged. Yeah, and you can always go to a blacksmith and request a custom design if you wanted, though they'd cost you an arm and a leg and they'd have to be aerodynamic for throwing, otherwise they'd be useless. She explained as Kenta put the weapons into one of the bags. Right, come on Gaki, time to go and get you kid out like a proper shinobi. Kenta's eye twitched. I swear if you call me that one more time I'll make good on my threat from before and shove a kunai up your ass. Anko stopped, turned to him and smirked. We'll see. Where'd a kid like you even learn that kind of language in the first place? Kenta rolled his eyes. You get enough foul comments thrown your way, you pick up how to throw them back. Kenta explained, causing Anko to blink, not sure what to make of that statement. Were his folks abusive or something? Is that why he and his brother live here? Anko thought to herself as she tried to piece together what she knew about her new charge as they start to walk out and onto the streets. Scene break. It was several minutes until they had arrived at one of the several shinobi clothing stores throughout the village. As they walked in, Kenta frowned, seeing the cold glare the girl behind the till was giving them as they entered and started to look around. Picking out some clothes, Kenta took them into the dressing area and started to try them on while Anko waited outside, tapping her foot, waiting impatiently. You done yet, Gaki? She called out after Kenta had been in for a few minutes. The curtain pulled back and Kenta stepped out wearing a pair of baggy combat trousers with multiple pockets and a black mesh shirt over a white t-shirt and 2 black elbow pads. Now that's more like it, you're looking like a proper shinobi now, Anko said, grinning seeing his new attire. Kenta's eyebrow twitched again. I look like a mini-male version of you, Kenta yelled, looking at the outfit she'd picked out for him. And why is that a bad thing? Anko laughed as Kenta stormed back into the changing room. I'm keeping the pants, but the rest is gone, Kenta called out as the mesh shirt and t-shirt came over the railing onto a grinning Anko's head. After 3 more minutes, Kenta emerged from the changing room again, this time wearing a dark red shirt, almost brown, with a black shinobi flat jacket over it unzipped, still wearing the black elbow pads from before, with a black mask wrapped around his neck with a red strip going down the left side of it. He had swapped out the open-toed shinobi sandals for boots and had donned a pair of shin and knee guards over the baggy pants that were the same shade red as his shirt with a single black stripe down their middle. And he completed his outfit with a pair of fingerless black gloves with metal-plated backs and knuckles. Fixing his gloves as he came out, Kenta grinned. I think this is more my style. Anko smirked, looking him up and down, nodding in approval. Not bad, the shinobi looks sweet, Sugaki. Now come on, let's go pay and get some extras of that outfit ordered before we get started on your training, Anko said, gesturing to the till. As they both approached, the girl glared at both Kenta and Anko coldly as they went to pay. Kenta glared back but was confused as to why Anko was getting the glare as well. Why her too? Is it because she's with me or something? Kenta thought to himself as Anko paid. Walking out of the shop, Anko started to look at the receipt given, and slowly her frown turned into a scowl and then total rage. What the hell? Anko yelled as she checked the receipt again. That fucking bitch. I knew there was something off about those numbers. She fucking charged me 3 times the price for all that. Oh, that tears that I'm going to fucking kill her. Anko yelled as she went to go back to the shop and rip the fake tits off that girl, only to stop when Kenta spoke. Don't bother, Kenta said as he started to put his kunai and shuriken into his pants pockets. Like hell she ripped me off. I'm not about to let that slide, Anko said in anger. Kenta shook his head. You'll be getting refunded for the mission, won't you? So what does it matter? Once you show the receipt to Gigi, that girl will have all the explaining to do then. You won't have to lift a finger. Besides, it's happened to me before. Anko looked to Kenta, confused as to what he meant, thinking that she'd been the reason they'd been overcharged due to her history with a certain snake, but decided not to push. Fine, Anko sighed as they started to continue on their way. I suppose you're right. You're too smart for a gaki your age sometimes, you know that? Kenta shrugged as he took out his sword from the bag. That's just the way I am. he said before he swung the flat of the blade at his waist as it wrapped around him 3 times before the tip of the sword and the ring on the handle connected as the magnetic strips he attached to his pants held the blade, still creating a belt. Anko smirked, seeing it. That thing is going to come in pretty handy. You'd better take good care of it, and make sure to read up on all the notes the research division made on it if you want to master how to use it. Kenta nodded. I've already started, he said as he gestured to the pocket on his left shin where the book was sticking out. I covered the first 5 pages before we got to the shop and I've already got some idea of a style I want to try. Anko smirked. You've still got a long ways to go before you can even start on creating a style. First things first, we've got to whip you into shape, she said with a sadistic smirk, making Kenta shiver again. Scene break. The two stood at the edge of a river in a clearing just north of the Hokage monument past the trees above. The area was relatively flat with a slope just before the tree line, giving them everything they need for Kenta's training, as Anko had put it. Trees for the chakra control, leaf balancing and tree climbing, the river for water walking, space to have light combat spars and practice jutsu, plenty of tall trees to use as a on-the-go battle area later, plus it was secluded and no one would disturb them. Once they had arrived, Anko had set up a privacy barrier around the place for secrecy as it had mentioned to do on the mission scroll. Hiruzen didn't want anyone to find out about Kenta being trained for as long as he could help it. Anko could guess one reason was that the council would start yelling about her history and how she shouldn't be a shinobi, much less teach a child, or as they would call it, corrupt an innocent mind. When in actuality that was only one of the few reasons they'd complain. Alright Gaki, so what's the first thing on your to-do list for training? Well, work on it before we get started on your physical conditioning, Anko explained. Kenta nodded. The 3 academy jutsu, Gigi said I have to learn them before I can get into the library to get more to learn. Anko slouched. Great, figured he'd saddle you with something boring like those 3. They're the easiest to learn, that's why they teach them at the academy. So I take it you've never used chakra before them either? Kenta shook his head, getting Anko to sigh again. Okay, then that's where we'll start. But before that, this is one and only chance I'm giving you to drop out now. If not, I'm going to train you into the ground each day. We'll be training 10 hours a day. I'll be picking you up at 10 every morning, so I expect you ready. We work till 1 in the evening where we break for lunch, then we'll be blitzing till 8 at night. There's no arguing, as it was part of the assignment scroll Hokage-sama gave me, and you'll need those 10 hours a day practice if you want to be any good in just 2 years training. Kenta nodded his head in determination. I'm not backing down. I wanted this training for a reason, and I won't quit no matter what. Anko smirked at the fire behind his eyes. This kid talks a big game, but let's see if he can back it up. I bet he caves within the week, Anko thought before nodding. Alright, let's get started then, she said, still smirking. Kenta nodded before pausing for a second. Before we start, Anko-san, I was wondering, just how old are you? Anko raised an eyebrow at the question before smirking. I'm 18 Gaki. I graduated my Chunin exams first try, and I'll be expecting the same thing from you in 4.5 years' time when your exams come around. Now let's begin your let's begin your training, she said with a rather disturbing smile, making Kenta gulp. Scene break. It was the day's end as Kenta dragged himself back to his and Naruto's apartments. Every joint in his body hurt after the day's training. Once he'd figured out how to access his chakra, Anko had started him on the leaf balancing exercise for a few hours before he'd started tree walking. Anko had explained the better your chakra control, the easier it was to learn jutsu. He made it 3 feet up the tree but had fallen so many times he was sure the bruises on his ass had bruises. Then after lunch, Anko had begun the real torture / training his physical conditioning. This was to help improve his stamina so he could last in long fights or handle the long travel distances for missions. Now most would have just had Kenta run laps of the training ground. Well, Anko isn't most people. While Kenta was running, he had her chasing him with Saban needles, laughing her ass off as she launched them at him for training, and he had to duck, dodge, weave, swerve and jump to get away from them, and that had went on for 4 hours with no breaks. Luckily the Saban were blunted so they only left small little bruises, but it had still pissed Kenta off something bad by the end. But he was too sore and exhausted to try and take revenge. He was tempted to arrange to set her up to be the victim of one of his and Naruto's pranks, but decided against it, realizing if she could do this to him with blunt Saban, what would she do to both him and Naruto with sharpened ones? Opening the door to his apartment, he left like his wrist was about to snap from the acrobatics he had to do to get away from the Saban in training, and hissed in pain, "Me and my big mouth." Kenta hissed as he opened the door, only to get knocked on his ass as he entered by a blonde blur. Groaning in pain as he lay on the floor, Kenta looked to see what had knocked him over, only to see Naruto on his chest. "Ototo, what the hell? Why'd you?" Kenta started before stopping, hearing sniffling coming from Naruto, as his brother looked to him, showing the tears in his eyes. "Nichan, I was so worried. I haven't seen you since you left this morning. When I got back the cupboards were full, but I couldn't find you anywhere. I thought. Naruto cried in relief. That's when it hit Kenta and he cursed himself mentally. It had been a few years, but the scars of that night were still there for them both. They'd been chased through the village by a mob when the head of the orphanage had locked them out on their birthday. They'd been trapped in an alleyway, and Kenta had used his body to shield Naruto as the villagers attacked them. He'd been hospitalized for a week after. Kenta hugged Naruto back. "I'm sorry for making you worry, Ototo. I'm sorry for being so stupid. I was just so excited to start my training I forgot to let you know. Gigi assigned me an instructor after he gave me some scrolls." I'll be training with her most days from now on, but I'll still be here in the mornings and evenings after 8, and I'll have weekends off so we can spend time together all those times. You'll just have to prank the villagers while I'm away those 10 hours a day." Naruto frowned hearing that. He didn't like being away from his Nichan, but he didn't want to get in the way of his dreams either. He knew it was his dream to be a strong shinobi to protect them both, but he wouldn't be left behind. Smiling at his brother, he laughed slightly. He. I thought it was something like that. I know you want to be a shinobi, so once we start the academy I'm going to get strong too. And I'll get just as strong if not stronger than you Nichan, and then I'm going to beat you. Kenta smirked at his brother, brightened up and laughed at the statement. In your dreams maybe, Ototo. The only way you'd beat me is if you took Gigi's hat and became Hokage yourself. Naruto grinned back at his brother. Then that's what I'll do. I'll become Hokage and beat you Nichan. Believe it? Kenta blinked at the sudden statement and smiled. Big brother to the Hokage, yeah, I think I can settle for that. Kenta thought before nodded. Alright then Ototo, you're on. Both brothers smirked at each other, and from that day their paths were set. Time skipped 3 months. In the forest area beyond the Hokage monument, 2 blurs could be seen deep inside, traveling at high speeds as one clearly chased the other. The red blur flies ahead of the purple one at a faster rate before pulling a turn and swings behind a tree as the purple blur continues on. After several seconds, Kenta Uzumaki sticks his head out from behind the tree as he tried to catch his breath. I swear that woman is mental and needs to be far away from any and all kinds of pointy objects for everyone's safety, Kenta thought to himself as he slowly felt himself getting his breath back. He was about to take off again only to stop when the silent sound of objects cutting through the air caught his attention, followed by 3 soft thuds before Kenta lost his balance and fell off the branch he was on, showing the 3 saban needles in his back. But before he hits the ground he disappears in a puff of smoke, leaving a log in his place. Enko then lands on the branch just a bit higher up, looking down with a smirk. Nicely done with the substitution. I almost thought I had you there for a second, she said as Kenta dropped down from the canopy above onto his original branch, looking up at the snake user with a smirk. Thanks, you almost would have if I hadn't heard them at the last second, Kenta said with sigh. He knew it had just been luck. He knew if she'd thrown them at the real chakra-enhanced speed he'd have been dead. Both Enko and Kenta turned in the direction of the now splintered log on the ground as both put their hands together and bowed. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten, he said in a grateful tone, only to jump off the branch the next second, dodging another set of saban needles. Grabbing the handle of his sword around his waist, he pulls it free before thrusting it forward as the blade extends out as it spears a tree. Then in a fluid motion Kenta pulls on it, launching himself forward, pulling the sword out of the tree as he shot past it with Enko hot on his tail as the chase begins anew. Ducking under another 3 needles, Kenta started to weave hand signs before he called out mentally Bunshin no Jutsu, as the entire area in front of Enko was clouded in smoke, and as she jumped through it she smirked as she counted 10 Kenta copies jumping from branch to branch in front of her. Not bad, Enko called as she raced after them. Trying to buy yourself some time to find another spot to slip away? She mused as she took out another handful of saban needles with a grin. Sorry, but that's not going to work, she said before jumping higher into the air and raining the saban needles down with deadly accuracy on all the clones, only for all of them to disappear. Enko immediately stops on a branch and scowls. Little brat actually gave me the slip. Must have been the clone's smoke cloud when he took off. He gets points for creativity I give him, that she mused as she was about to turn to track him down, only to stop when she saw movement as Hiruzen came around one of the trees. As he looked up, "Ah, there you are, Enko," Hiruzen called up to her. "I just came out to see how Kenta was progressing." "Where is Hiruzen?" started to ask as Enko drops down onto the ground, but before he could finish she was on him with a kunai drawn, about to run him through. "Nice try with the Hengaki, but I'm not going to fall for." Enko grinned, thinking she'd got him, only to be shocked when the Hokage turned into smoke, making her eyes go wide. "A Bunshin," she said in shock, only to freeze, feeling the cold metal of Kenta's sword at the back of her neck, and she smirks. "Nice one, a Bunshin with a henge. I didn't even sense you using chakra. You're getting better." Kenta smirked. "Thanks, I figured I needed to pull something like that to get you to lower your guard for a second before I could take advantage. The Bunshin and henge traps seem to fit the bill," he said as he took his sword away from her neck as Enko stood up. "And I walked right into it," Enko said, shaking her head. "I must be losing my touch training you these past 3 months. But damn if it hasn't been worth it to see you grow. You learned those jutsu in no time flat, and then you used them in a combat situation. I'm almost impressed," she said as a smirk crossed her face. Kenta smirked. "Well, with the senseis, or rather slave drivers, like you and Geisen drilling me into the ground every day, it's hard not to get good." Enko laughed. "Hey, I'm not as bad as that spandex-wearing freak, but I think it's safe to say that between the 2 of us we've whipped you into shape. Your chakra control could use some work, and you can't make any less than 10 clones at a single time, but that's a given due to your huge chakra reserves. However, I think we can get it to Jonin level control by the time you start the academy, and I think it's safe to say you've got those academy jutsu down flat. What did eyebrows say about your taijutsu?" Kenta's sweat dropped. While removing all the flames of youth comments, he said, "I'm at an acceptable level for someone my age. I've got the academy style down flat, and he says he has a few styles that might be a good fit for me, and that he'll be bringing some scrolls of them to our next training session in a week's time." Enko nodded and was about to speak when a third voice cut through the moment's silence. "Well, it certainly sounds like things are progressing well in your training, Kenta-kun. spoke Hiruzen as he came around one of the trees. Anko bows seeing the Hokage and Kenta smirked before doing the same. Hey Gigi, what brings you all the way out here? Hiruzen smiled. Well, I just came out to check on your progress. But when I came into sight, the first thing I saw was Anko attacking what looked to be a bunch of myself. Just what are you two training out here for, pray tell? Hiruzen asked, raising an eyebrow. Both Anko and Kenta rubbed the backs of their heads sheepishly. Sorry Gigi. I needed a transformation that could at the least be viable for someone who would come out here. Gai-sen is away on that mission and you're the only other person that knows we're out here. Hiruzen chuckled at Kenta's reasons. I understand my boy, no harm done. And it was a very clever plan. I can see Anko-chan's reports on you haven't been wrong. You certainly have come a long way in the past 3 months. I'd even say you're beyond any academy student's level by now to be able to keep a Chunin shinobi like Anko here running for over an hour and preform all academy jutsu. I'd make you genin right now if there wasn't a mountain of paperwork involved with early admissions. Both Anko and Kenta's sweat dropped at that statement. Kenta then grinned. Thanks Gigi. I hope this means you're going to let me into the shinobi library now that I've got the basics down. I really want to see what jutsu there are. Hiruzen chuckled. Of course Kenta-kun, I've had your permit, and a training ground ready for you ever since Anko's last report. I knew you wouldn't take long. Hiruzen said as he took out a card and scrolled out from inside his robes before tossing them to Kenta. The card will allow you access to the shinobi library and the scroll is an all-access permit to Training Ground 43 beside the Forest of Death, which is rarely used due to its proximity to the forest, which Anko has taken to making her own personal training ground. Anko grinned. Yep, no better place to have some fun. Feel free to drop in. I can guarantee it will be quite the experience. Anko said as she leaned on Kenta's shoulder with a grin. Man, I can't wait to see what you're going to be like in 21 months. You'll be ripping it at the academy. Heck, you might be the next first-year graduate since that Itachi. Kenta frowned and shook his head. No, I won't be. I intend to hold back my skills at the academy as best I can. Kenta announced, which brought looks of shock and confusion to Anko and Hiruzen's faces. But why would you want to do that, Kenta? Hiruzen asked. Yeah, wasn't all this meant to be about becoming a shinobi sooner? Anko asked after. Kenta shook his head. In a way yes, but in the most part it's just preparation. I want to be able to protect myself and Ototo, and I can only do that if I'm close to him as much as possible. If I graduated early I'd be a genin and likely within 2 years a chunin. All the time doing missions and rank C or above will likely take me away from the village and Ototo too. I can't let that happen. Kenta said before he gave Hiruzen a pleading look. I'm sure you've noticed by now, Gigi, the cold, unfeeling looks we both get from everyone else in the village. I don't know what is pushing these feelings, but if I were to be away on missions while Ototo was here in the village, he'd be all alone sometimes for weeks at a time or maybe even months, and he'd be all alone. I couldn't do that to him even if it is to keep him safe. So I realized I'm going to be staying in the academy as a student until we both come out at the same time. That way we can both be on the same team and do missions together. Or at the very least by then he'll have comrades that can help him and be friendly with so he won't be so lonely. Hiruzen smiled, nodding in understanding. Everything he was doing was for his brother's safety, and Hiruzen couldn't have been more proud of Kenta's way of thinking. He could see the fire burning behind his young eyes. It burned to protect the ones he cared for, his brother and those close to him, and it was the fire that would never go out. With a grin, Anko grappled Kenta into a playful headlock, laughing to herself. Ah, who knew you were such a little softy gaki? Anko teased as they wrestled. In the headlock, Kenta growled in irritation as his hand immediately went to his pocket, and in a fast draw Kenta pulled out a kunai, and in one fluid motion jabbed it into Anko's skirt covered behind. The snake charmer's eyes then shot open wide before she shot up comically into the air, her hand holding her ass as she lets out a scream of OWWWWWWWW, which caused all birds in the trees to take off into the sky. Kenta just twirled the kunai around his finger before smirking as he returned it to his pocket. I warned her, another comment on my height or age, and I'd be sticking a kunai up her ass. Hiruzen chuckled slightly. That you did, my boy. Now Kenta-kun, are you sure you want to hold back in the academy? Other students may see you as a weakling and try to take advantage of that. Kenta just gives a little chuckle. Let them try, Gigi. When I say I'll be holding back, that doesn't mean by a lot. I'm going for the Rookie of the Year slot at the end of it all, but it will be after the 4 years. As Kenta finished speaking, Anko finally came back to the ground. WWWW. Before crashing back into the ground, still rubbing her backside. Gaki. That hurt. She yelled in anger before tossing 3 kunai at him. Kenta shocked both Anko and Hiruzen by reacting faster than they thought he could and caught all 3 in midair with a smirk. Before dropping them, I'll be taking the rest of the day off today. I want to go check out the library and make sure Ototo isn't getting himself into any trouble. I'll stop by your office after the library, Gigi, if I have any questions. Not a problem, Kenta-kun, Hiruzen said as he waved to the boy as he walked off back towards the village. Anko got up, still rubbing her backside. Damn, that Gaki can't take a joke, she said, walking over to beside the Hokage as her face grew slightly serious. Are you sure this is wise, Hokage-sama, to allow Kenta to hold himself back just for the sake of his brother? She asked in concern. Hiruzen sighed and shook his head. I've never put this forward, but I've never agreed with the graduating age of the academy. If I had my way, it would be admittance at 13 and then graduation only after 5 years, and the curriculum would be a lot harder to strengthen the students. I don't like sending children into battle or into danger, but it seems that's what has to be done. So if a child holds himself back in order to protect someone or until he's ready, I will not force him or her to do otherwise. They should enjoy their lives to the fullest and enjoy their childhoods as long as possible, don't you agree? Enko gave a small smile and nodded. Yeah, one thing's for sure though. When that Gaki does graduate, he's going to be one hell of a shinobi. Unbeknownst to both of them, hidden high in the trees, they were being watched by a small childlike figure all in black with a plain white mask on his face, with just the kanji for Eni on its forehead as it mentally took notes on what had just occurred before disappearing into a swirl of leaves. Scene break with Kenta. Coming out of the forest tree, Kenta kept walking at a brisk pace, heading right for the cliff's edge, and didn't stop as he stepped over the edge and began to climb down the flat surface with just his feet. That tree climbing exercise really comes in handy, Kenta thought as he began to walk down the face of the cliff. Getting to a reasonable height from the rooftops, Kenta channeled chakra into his legs and pushed off in a jump and landed on the rooftops, his fall braced by chakra as he continued on his way by rooftops to avoid the civilians glaring at him on the streets below. Reaching a junction in the streets, Kenta paused to catch his breath only to hear a loud crash and a bang before a pink smoke filled one of the shops below. Kenta recognized it as one of the shops that had overcharged him and Naruto for their clothing. This confused Kenta for a second before out of the smoke burst his blonde brother, followed by the shopkeeper who was covered in a neon pink paint with glitter and feathers speckling his body. Kenta had to hold in his laughter at the sight of the man, and looking at the other spectators, they were doing the same as the man started to give chase to Naruto, yelling and cursing as he went. Though it was difficult to make out given the fact his mouth was filled with paint and feathers. As they approached the junction, Kenta decided to intervene and get his ototo out of there as he reached into his pocket and took out 3 smoke pellets before taking aim. As both Naruto and the man reached the junction, the smoke pellets hit the ground, and in seconds the area was filled with smoke as the red blur of Kenta shot into the smoke and a red and blonde blur shot out, and as the smoke cleared, all that was left was the shopkeeper still covered in paint, feathers and glitter, now getting pointed and laughed at by all onlookers. 3 streets away, Kenta landed in an alleyway as he set Naruto down on the ground as they both started laughing. Ha 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 ha, that was a good one, Ototo, best one yet. Where the hell did you get those feathers from? He looked like a half-cooked chicken. Kenta laughed, holding his gut. Naruto chuckled, leaning against the wall for support. I got them out of the trash stock from one of the store that sells bedroom quilts. The owner dissed Ayamne's and Tuchiaji's ramen, so I mud-bombed his store earlier and took the feathers from the ruined stock he had to throw out. Hearing the explanation, Kenta shook his head as he calmed down. Damn, you're a resourceful one, Ototo. Pranking one fool to get resources to prank another. I'd call you an evil genius if you didn't get caught all the time. Naruto smirked. But how was I not meant to? I had to see it happen and enjoy it, and then I just burst out laughing as soon as it happened. Kenta sighed. Try watching from a distance then, he said as he started walking off. I'm out of training early today, so I'll be home shortly. I just need to make a stop. Gigi finally got me my permit to get into the shinobi library, and I want to see what jutsu I can pick to learn. Okay, Nichan, I'll see you around. Naruto waved as his brother walked off in one direction, and he in the other, trying to think of whom to prank next, or if he should get some ramen to celebrate his successful pranks so far. Kenta took to the rooftops again, and it soon changed to branches as he hopped through the tree line of the training grounds. The shinobi library was on the other side, so he planned on cutting through to get there. But as he was jumping from branch to branch, a noise caught his attention, and he stopped on the last branch and looked in the direction of the noise. It sounded like voices, but there wasn't a training ground in the area they were coming from. Deciding to investigate, Kenta took off in the direction the voices were coming from, as they got louder on his approach. As he reached a small clearing, too small to be a registered training ground by the river, as he dropped out of the tree line and landed in the bushes, seeing 4 kids in the small clearing. 3 boys, each looked slightly older than him, maybe by a year or 2, and judging by their clothing they were civilians. No clan markings. They seemed to be being led by the middle boy, who was bigger than the others and looked a bit older. The 3 of them were crowding around the 4th figure, a girl with long back length, black hair and black eyes. She had gentle features and a small stature, wearing black knee-length shorts and a lighter shade top with a red band around its neck. Looking at her, Kenta could tell one thing: she looked pissed off, and her glare threatening to bust anyone's balls that even looked at her wrong. But it didn't seem to bother the older boys. Kenta listened in as they started again. So you're here again. Why the hell don't you go away? The girl scowled at the 3 boys. Why should we do that, oh high and mighty princess of the Uchiha? One boy laughed. Yeah, we don't have to listen to you. This isn't your clan's compound. Another one sneered. No, but I was here first like I always am, and yet you idiots don't seem to get the idea. The girl said with the scowl not dropping. Oh, so we're idiots now, are we? You hear that? This Uchiha slut thinks she's better than us. The eldest said as he balled his fists. Hardly, just because of your clan's freaky eyes. You think you're above us regular people, is that it? The other glared. She doesn't even have her Sharingan yet, and she still thinks she's better than us. The third said. Kenta, who was watching from the bushes, raised an eyebrow. Sharingan, that sounds interesting. One more thing to ask Gigi about later, he thought as he watched on. The girl just shook her head in awe of these 3 idiots. Are you 3 just stupid or something? Not once have I said I was better than any of you. But you clearly think I am. I mean, you come here every time to insult me, and it's always the three of you. What's the matter? Think you can't take me one-on-one? She said with a small laugh. Kenta grinned from the bushes. Girls got fire, he thought, as he watched only for it to turn to a glare as he saw the boys starting to move in on the girl. That's it, I think it's time we teach this Uchiha slut to watch that mouth of hers, the eldest said as he cracked his knuckles as they started to crowd the girl. That was when Kenta rose from the bushes. Hey idiots, leave her alone, he said, coming out of the bushes, glare firmly in place. The three boys turned to him and the girl looked at him in shock, not knowing her had been there this whole time. And who the hell are you supposed to be? The eldest said as he looked to Kenta. Kenta smirked. Just a passerby who dislikes bullies, especially cowardly ones who need to gang up on a girl just to prove a point. The eldest growled in anger and Kenta could see he was pissing him off. That was the plan. An angry opponent is one who is likely to attack first and make the most mistakes. That's when you strike. Anko's word echoed in Kenta's head, and he planned to follow them. It seemed to be going to plan so far. That was until one of the smaller boys spoke. Hey, I know you. You're that Joker's big brother, the one that's always getting into trouble and pissing off the adults, like worthless trash. The one boy quipped, earning Kenta's glare. What did you just say? Kenta said as he started walking forward, keeping the three boys in his line of sight. What did you just call my Ototo? Worthless trash, just like you. The boy repeated, only to be blindsided by a haymaker he never saw coming as Kenta attacked him with speed, making both other boys jump back as their fiend lands at their feet. Kenta glares at them angrily. I was just going to let you off and tell you to leave this nice girl alone. But now I'm afraid I can't do that, not after you said something so stupid like that. Stupid fools like you who think it's alright to gang up on a girl and then put down my Ototo need to have a lesson beaten into you. Once I'm done with you, you'll think twice about saying anything against my family again, especially since my Ototo will be Hokage one day. Kenta said in all seriousness. He knew Naruto would be, because he would make damn sure it happened. Hearing him, the other two boys just burst out laughing. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, right, like that Baka can become the Hokage. You must have something screwed with your head. The younger one said. Yeah, if that Baka brother of yours can become the Hokage, then I'm the Shodai Hokage reborn. The eldest laughed. There's no way gutter trash like him will, he started to say before he suddenly found the wind knocked out of him when Kenta rushed him, eyes full of anger, as he drove his fist into the older boy's gut hard, making him double over into the ground clutching his gut. Kenta had included some chakra in the punch to make sure it hurt. No one spoke ill of his Ototo's dream and didn't pay a price. The younger boy's eyes widened as Kenta went for him, throwing a heel kick to the side of his head before he could react, and was sent to the ground like the first two as Kenta glared down at them, his anger controlling him. Shut your mouths! Kenta yelled, making the girl behind him flinch, hearing his anger. I can take a lot of stuff, but when someone insults my family right to my face, that crosses the line. Kenta said, his fists gripping tight in his rage. You call us trash? Then what the hell does that make you? The girl watching was in a state of shock. She hadn't seen anyone move like that except her older brother when she saw him training once. But here was this boy her age moving with such speed and strength enough to take on boys 2 or 3 years older was amazing, and the determination in his voice had her mesmerizes. Only one thought was on her mind. Who are you? The older boy on the ground snarled at the comment as he reached for his side pocket and took out the kunai he had for practice as he used his other hand to scoop up some dirt from the ground. He'd make this punk pay for this. Then he got up off the ground, throwing the dirt in Kenta's face. The dirt and gravel hit Kenta right in the eyes, blocking his vision. As his hands went to his eyes to rub it away, he heard the elder boy yell. Die, you trash! He called out. Kenta reacted and turned away from where the voice was, but was a moment too slow as he felt a burning sensation on his chin as the older boy's kunai slashed at him. Feeling the burn, Kenta reacted and reached out, grabbing the older boy's hand and pulling him off balance before driving his knee into the boy's gut as he twisted his hand, making him yelp, and dropped the kunai before falling to the ground, clutching his wrist into his gut in pain. Kenta wiped the dirt out of his eyes as he squinted just in time to see the first boy coming at him with a rock. Kenta just went low to dodge it before bringing his fist up in an uppercut into the boy's chin, knocking him flat on the ground as all three lay groaning. The girl watching, looking on in shock, seeing the boy that had come to her aid hurt for getting involved as she covered her mouth as she gasped, seeing the blood trickling from his chin as he rubbed his eyes. The wound went from just below the right of his lower lip down to the right of his chin and was bleeding heavily. Kenta finished rubbing his eyes, though it wasn't really doing much good at this point. He needed to wash the dirt out but couldn't at the moment. His hand went to the wound on his chin and he hissed as he touched it and felt the pain. Damn it, that stings, he thought as his hand lowered to his waist and gripped the handle of his sword as he undid the magnetic clasp and pulled it from his holds as it snapped into its solid form as he held it out at his side as he turned to the eldest boy and pointed the sword to his throat. Who froze, seeing the blade for the first time, not having noticed it before. So you like blades, HM? Well, how do you like mine? Kenta said with an evil grin on his face, a trait he picked up over the months after seeing Anko do it so many times. He twisted the blade slightly as it caught the light from the sun, making him look even more fearsome. The boy was shaking as Kenta started taking again. So let's get one thing straight right here and now. If I ever hear you three insulting my family or anyone else again, or if I catch you three back here annoying this girl, Well, he said before leaning into the boy's ear as his grin grew more sadistic before he whispered, they won't find your bodies for months. Do you catch my drift? He said as they could hear the boy gulp in fear as he stood back up and took his sword away. The boy was still shaking as Kenta grinned. Boo! The boy yelped as he clambered to his feet and started to run, his two buddies running away after him, yelling as they went. Run! Get away! Tusan was right, he and his brother are both demons. Hearing that last one, Kenta scowled but just sighed, he'd heard it all before. Turning, he went to the water's edge and splashed some water in his face to try and clean out the dirt from his eyes. The girl frowned hearing what the boys said as they ran away. If anyone's a demon around here, it's them, she thought before she went over to help the boy who had came to her aid. Are you alright? The girl asked, coming up behind him. Yeah, Kenta said as he finished up. Sorry you had to see me like that. I just can't stand baka like them putting down my only family. He said as he used his sleeve to dry the water away as he turned to her with a smirk. Name's Kenta Uzumaki. The girl frowned slightly. Why was he apologizing? It was those boys who should have been apologizing, and her for letting him get hurt for standing up for her. I'm Sayaka Uchiha. She said before bowing her head. Thank you for helping me. I'm sorry you got hurt. Kenta smirked as he took out one of the large bandages from his pouch, after having stocked up after day 3 of having Anko as a sensei, and covered the wound as he waved her off. Don't worry about it. I've gotten worse in my training. My sensei's a real sadist for that kind of stuff. She says you can't be a shinobi without getting cut up a little, but I think I prefer her Sanban needles to a kunai. Sayaka giggled slightly hearing that. Your sensei sounds kind of scary, but still thank you. If you hadn't come by, I'm not sure what might have happened. She said, smiling slightly. Kenta nodded. I take it those 3 come around here often then? He asked, getting all the information. Sayaka nodded her head. Yeah, well, whenever I come here to train, and privately at least. She explained. Kenta crossed his arms, looking at her confused. Then why don't you train in your clan's compound? You said you were an Uchiha, right? Last I checked, you have several training grounds registered to your clan. Why come here? Sayaka seemed to frown when she was called an Uchiha, but nodded. That's true, but they're always in use by others in my clan, and my eldest brother is always away training with my older twin brother gone to watch him. Kenta nodded, understanding. I see. So what days do you come here to train then? He asked, curious as to how serious she was in her training. Anko had told him about fangirls in the academy fawning over one of the boys in class and not taking their training seriously. He wanted to see if she was likely to be one or if she was going to be a real kunoichi. Sayaka frowned. This day every week, she said, sounding depressed at the fact. The rest of the time my Tusan has me studying at home. She said, clenching her fist slightly. He doesn't want me to be a kunoichi, saying they're not important and weak. So this is the only place I can come to practice to prove him wrong. The one day a week my Ka-san was able to convince him to let me have off from studying. She said, smiling slightly when she spoke of her Ka-san. Kenta frowned slightly hearing that this was the only time she could train, and scowled hearing what her father had said. Well, I know my kunoichi-sensei who would love to have him say that to her face and see what happens. But I think I might have a solution to your problem if you're open to it. Sayaka looked hesitant for a moment, but slowly nodded, urging him to continue with his idea. Kenta smirked. How about I help you to train? We could meet up here to train on the days you can get away. Kenta offered. Don't get me wrong, all training by yourself is alright. With no one to help you, your growth will be limited. Plus it means that if those idiots come around again, they won't be able to bother you. Though after my little display a few minutes ago, I don't think that will be a problem. Sayaka giggled slightly hearing that last part as she started to think on his words. His logic was sound and simple, and it would be nice to have someone to train with her for a change instead of being alone. Okay, I don't see why not, she said with a small smile. Kenta smiled back. Great, I'll see you here next week then, say 9ish. He offered. I'd stay to train now, but I only just finished my own training and I've got some errands to run before I have to meet someone. Kenta explained before pausing for a second as he turned. Plus I think it would be best if you took at least one of the days your Ka-san got you off to relax. All the training in the world won't help you if you have a mental breakdown from too much stress. Plus you're too cute to not have fun once in a while, he said while walking away. Had he been looking at her, he would have noticed the small look of shock she had. Instead, he just waved over his shoulder to her. Well, Johnny, he finished before jumping back into the trees and taking off. Sayaka just stood there watching. She had managed not to react to his last words until he was gone a few seconds. But once he was out of sight, a small blush appeared on her cheeks. He thinks I'm cute, she thought as a small happy smile came to her face. Scene break. Walking into the library, Kenta couldn't help but let his eyes trail up as he walked in. The size of the place was baffling to him. He was sure that he'd need a map to navigate the place or risk getting lost in the maze that was the library. Looking to the left side of the library, he could see the shinobi section that was caged off for security, and there was a joined office space with a window where the on-duty librarian sat to let people into the section. As Kenta approached the window, the girl behind the glass scowled seeing him and stood up glaring at him. Get out, we don't need your kind here, she snapped at him. Kenta didn't flinch and pressed the card to the glass. I don't have time for your BS, lady. See this? It means I have written permission from Hokage-sama to use this library whenever I want. It also means he knows I'm here, so if I go to him now and tell him you refuse to let me in, I think he'd be more than willing to find you a cell in TNI to wait in until you've thought up a good reason that Ibiki will believe as to why you're refusing me entry," he said as he returned the glare equally as cold. He knew the threat would work. Everyone in the village knew who Ibiki was, the head torturer of the TNI division where Anko worked. Kenta had actually had the chance to meet the man a month back when he came looking for Anko. Nice enough guy, a little intimidating with his height and scars, but nice nonetheless. The girl continued to scowl at him but couldn't say anything in revoke as she hit the button to open the cage door. Taking his card away, Kenta turned and walked in, checking that there was a release button on the inside so he could enter and not worry about being locked in for hours until the Hokage found him. Walking down the rows of shelved, Kenta was deep in thought. I'd better learn everything I can about the basics first before I try anything, and the basics of all ninjutsu is chakra, so better start there and see if there's anything Anko hasn't taught me about it yet, he thought as he lifted one of the baskets for holding the scrolls and started going through the rows of scrolls slowly, not wanting to miss anything that might be important. Chakra control, I wonder what other methods there are besides the leaf and tree climbing ones? As he put the scroll into the basket and looked to see another scroll. Chakra natures, wonder what that's about, he thought as he took down the scroll and put it in his basket before continuing on. After lifting 3 more scrolls on the uses of chakra, Kenta started going down the ninjutsu rows, searching with a fine-tooth comb. As he continued, he noticed a scroll entitled Bunshin and their categories. Taking the scroll down, Kenta looked at it, puzzled for a moment. Does this mean there's more than one type of Bunshin other than what I've learned? He thought before opening the scroll and reading the first section, his eyes widening. Interesting. So shinobi can make clones through elements that can fight and aren't just projections. Very interesting indeed. That's another thing to ask Gigi about, he thought as he rolled the scroll up and put it in his basket and looked back down the rows. I need something more than just these few jutsu. Something to really make me stand out and give me an edge. Let's see what I can find, he thinks before looking to the more advanced section of the aisles and smirked. Coming out of the aisle a few minutes later, he had his basket fairly full with another 5 scrolls. He had picked up multiple types of jutsu to learn, variations of katan, fire, and right-un, lighting, jutsu with a few assorted doton, earth, jutsu, and even some suiton, water, and futon, wind, jutsu. Though he was a little disappointed in the limited selection of futon and right-un jutsu they had here, but he just have to make do. Gotta see which type I prefer to use. Gigi said that it's good to have variation in jutsu choices, so I'll learn what I can for now. As he started walking into the next aisle, he stopped and noticed the Bukijutsu, weapon techniques, section and smirked. Let's see here, I can't start creating my own style until I've got a grasp of the styles there are out there. So I have a grasp on what I've got to work with when the time comes, and there's no time like the present, he thinks as he walks over and starts his next search. Coming out after 10 minutes, Kenta had a very happy look on his face as several more scrolls filled his basket. Perfect. I should be able to work with these and have a style in no time. It will be practicing it that's going to be the hard part. I think I'll have to see about getting a pair of armored gloves for this. I don't want my hands cut to shreds, he thinks as he walks before a final aisle catches his eyes, the small Iryo ninjutsu, medical ninja techniques, aisle that he'd almost missed, and a thought came to his head. Well, that could help until I get the gloves, plus it could be interesting to learn, he thought as he walked over and took one of the lower level scrolls after taking a quick peek and walked on. Getting to the booking section, Kenta slotted his many choices into the slot provided and pushed the slot closed only for a storage scroll to roll out the bottom slot with copies of the scrolls he booked sealed inside. Taking it, Kenta made a beeline to the exit, eager to get to Hiruzen and asked him the many questions he now had. However, as he left, he missed the cold glare he was getting from the librarian, who watched him go before lifting the phone to make a call. Scene break. After leaving the library, Kenta quickly took to the rooftops too and started making his way to the apartment building where he and Naruto lived to drop off his scrolls. Getting there, he opened the scroll and looked through to find one in particular and smirked as he put it on the table in Naruto's apartment, and wrote a note and placed it on top that said, "Thought this would help with watching your pranks. We'll work on it tonight when I get back, Nichan." The title of the scroll read Kakuremino no Jutsu, Cloak of Invisibility Technique. Leaving the rest of the scrolls in his apartment, Kenta walked out and took to the rooftops once more, heading for the Hokage's office, his head buzzing with questions that he was eager to get answered. Scene break. Hiruzen sat in his office, his paperwork flow stemmed for the evening as he began to light up his pipe and took a breath before exhaling with a relaxed sigh as he smirked. Not many decide to enter my office that way. I can think of only one, and it seems you're taking up that habit as well now. Hiruzen smirked before looking to the open window to see Kenta sitting there shaking his head. What can I say, I have style, Kenta said, stepping in, before looking at Hiruzen shaking his head again. You know that's bad for your health, Gigi. Hiruzen chuckled. When you get to my age, Kenta, you enjoy the little things. So what questions do you have, for he started but stopped as his gaze settles on Kenta's chin and a small scowl settled in. What happened to your chin, Kenta? That wasn't from training. Kenta shook his head. Teaching some bullies a lesson for picking on those who don't deserve it. I would have let them be, except they decided to run their mouths about Ototo. I couldn't let that go, just wasn't expecting one of them to throw dirt in my eyes and come at me with a kunai. They ended up worse than I did. he explained as Hiruzen pulled back the bandage, checking the wound as his scowl deepened. It's not deep enough to require stitches, but it will scar. Hiruzen said as he replaced the bandage. Who are they, Kenta? Kenta shook his head. It doesn't matter, Gigi. I made sure to put the fear of Kami into them before scaring them off. They won't be trying it again. Hiruzen was going to try and push for the names again but stopped when he saw the look in Kenta's eyes. Steadfast and determined, he knew he wouldn't budge from his decision on the matter. There's that Uzumaki blood again, Hiruzen thought with a mental smirk before sighing. Very well, Kenta. If you're not wanting to press charges, then all right. He said as he sat down behind his desk again. So I take it your trip to the library was productive, and you have questions. Kenta nodded. A fair few actually. Can you tell me what exactly is this Sharingan I've heard about? I know it's involved with the Uchiha clan, but what exactly does it do? Hiruzen blinked at the sudden and specific question. That's a rather specific question. I'll try to explain it as best I can. You see, Kenta, the Sharingan is what is known as a bloodline limit or Kekkai Genkai. This is a specific ability that is passed down through a person's blood. The Sharingan is one of the few known Kekkai Genkai that presents itself in the user's eyes and is classified as a dojutsu. So what do these Sharingan actually look like then when they're used? Kenta asked. Hiruzen replies, well, when an Uchiha has awakened their Sharingan through an intense situation, their Sharingan will present itself as the Uchiha's iris turns red and 3 black tomos form in a ring. When active, it gives the Uchiha abilities that are what makes the Uchiha clan so powerful, allowing them to see chakra and detect genjutsu with ease, enhanced vision meaning they can read lips and follow extreme movements with ease, and one of the abilities that makes them envious of most shinobi, the ability to copy any ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu with near-perfect accuracy and add it to their own skill sets. So you're telling me they only have to see a jutsu with those eyes and they can copy it perfectly? Kenta said in shock, his mind racing with the possibilities of such a skill. Hiruzen nodded. Yes, as long as they can see the hand signs involved they can copy and preform it, but do not mistake this as mastering a jutsu, Kenta. While they may be able to perform it, they will not be able to compare to one who has practiced the jutsu and mastered it. What do you mean master it? How do you master a jutsu? Kenta asked, trying to figure out what Hiruzen meant. You practice it so long and hard that you are able to perform a jutsu with ease and without hand signs. It takes months of practice, sometimes years, to master a jutsu to that extent, and it's only by that can you truly master a jutsu. That is what I mean, Hiruzen says. Kenta nodded. I see. Even at that, the Sharingan is an extremely potent ability with that skill. Yes, it is, and that is only 3 of its abilities. Others are kept secret by the clan, but one thing that you should know is that should you ever fight one, do not look into their eyes. They have the power to trap you in a genjutsu with a single glance, and like that the fight is over before it even began, Hiruzen said. Kenta gulped slightly. That's just frightening. Not being able to fight while looking at your opponent's face would be tricky. You'd have to keep your eyes down and watch another part to determine their movements like their feet. Hiruzen smirked. Very perceptive, Kenta. Yes, in fact I believe that guy had been learning such a skill himself. He has a rival with one of the other Jonin who has an implanted Sharingan, and so in order to fight him when he uses it, he has learned to fight by watching his opponent's feet. He might teach it to you if you ask. I'll have to do that, Gigi. Just out of curiosity, what other dojutsu are there? You said there were others? Kenta asks. Hiruzen nodded. One is just a legend, but the third belongs to the next strongest clan in Konoha, the Hyuga clan, and their dojutsu, the Byakugan. It presents itself by pulsing veins around the user's eye and grants them extreme visionary abilities, allowing them to see chakra networks and see through solid mass as well as full 360-degree vision, making them great hunters and trackers as no one can hide from them. And lethal in taijutsu with their specialized taijutsu style, the Juken, gentle fist style that targets their opponent's chakra pathway system by closing their tenketsu points with extreme speeds. Kenta gulped. That would make them tricky to beat. You couldn't sneak up on them, and on top of that they'd be murder at close combat with that style. I hope I never have to fight one in the close future. I'd better start thinking up ways to counter them in fights. Hiruzen chuckled. If you do, be sure to keep it to yourself. I don't think either Fugaku Uchiha or Hayashi Hyuga would appreciate you telling people how to beat their clansmen. But what has brought on all these questions? Did you read about them in the library? Kenta shook his head. No reason, Gigi. I just overheard someone mention the Sharingan earlier and was curious is all. Actually, I was hoping you could explain about 2 scrolls I read on chakra nature and element bunshins. Hiruzen blinked. Those are rather advanced scrolls you're reading, Kenta. Elemental bunshins are chunin rank and chakra nature is high jonin, he said before stroking his beard as smirked slightly. But I don't see the harm in explaining some of the basics of those since you're curious. Firstly, let's check your natural affinity is, he said as he opened the lower left drawer of his desk. And how do we do that, Gigi? Kenta asked, seeing Hiruzen reach into the drawer. Hiruzen smirked, taking out a slip of paper. With this, he said, holding out the paper. This is what's known as chakra paper. By channeling your chakra through this paper, it will tell you your elemental affinity. There are 5 types of chakra nature: fire, water, earth, lightning, and wind. Fire turns the paper to ash, water makes it soggy, earth turns it to dust, lightning crumples it, and wind cuts it in half. So let's see what you have. Hiruzen finished as Kenta took the paper. Nodding, Kenta looked to the paper and began channeling his chakra, and the effect was instantaneous. It cut in half and one part crumpled up and the other side turned soggy. Kenta blinked in shock seeing the paper and looked to Hiruzen, who blinked in awe while he almost dropped his pipe. Well, this is certainly a rarity. 3 chakra affinities at your age. Most jonin have 2 affinities, and 2 have 3 is quite rare. Hiruzen said, not taking his eyes off the paper. You certainly are full of surprises, just like your Tusan. Kenta couldn't help but smile slightly as he looked back to the paper. So what does this mean, Gigi? He asked, soon to be regretting that question as Hiruzen cleared his throat. 3 hours later, Kenta was now sitting down on the left sofa, his head in his hands as he desperately tried to keep himself awake, listening through the 3-hour-long lecture he had walked into, asking about what his new chakra affinities meant. He could remember all the Hiruzen had talked about, how each affinity made it easier for him to master jutsu of the same element, and how if clans with the Kekkei Genkai could combine the elements to form new ones, which had begun a whole history lesson on the different clans that had those Kekkei Genkai. Through it all, Kenta had made some mental notes for the next time he went to the library to look up Suiton, Futon, and Right-un jutsus. Although there wasn't really many of those last 2 in the library if he recalled. Now he was listening to Hiruzen talk about bunshins and how they can be made of different elements, when a certain phrase caught his attention. And then there's the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Actually, Kage Bunshins are created by dividing one's chakra in half and splitting it evenly so no actual elements are involved in this process. This one has an advantage over the others. The clones are more durable and have added effects, but its high chakra requirements and effects make it what is known as a kinjutsu, or forbidden technique that only with my permission can it be taught. On top of which it is a B-class technique that is out of your league for now. Hiruzen warns. Kenta blinked at Hiruzen's words before grinning. What's that, Gigi? You think I can hack it or something? I bet you I could have that jutsu down on my own in a week if I wanted to. Hiruzen chuckled. Ha ha ha, anxious as always for a challenge, he said before shaking his head. But this isn't something to be taken lightly, Kenta. The Kage Bunshin is a dangerous technique. If you use it too much you could drain all your chakra and pass out from chakra exhaustion. Kenta smirked. Gigi, when I first unlocked my chakra and at the beginning of my training, Enko said I had one of the largest supplies she'd ever seen. She said I had high jonin reserves, and that's only grown as I've trained. I think I've got enough chakra to spare easy. Hiruzen nodded his head. Indeed, I read her report on the matter. That's in Uzumaki's reserves for you. By the time he leaves the academy his reserves will dwarf what mine were in my prime. Perhaps he could actually pull it off. It would only help his training if he does, and he could pass it on to Naruto in a few years when his own reserves become a problem. Very well, Kenta, I will give you permission to learn it. But first, I believe you said something about a bet? Kenta smirked as he looked to Hiruzen. Yes. Alright, if I can do it in 1 week, then you take me on as your student. He said, his smirk growing. I learn under you when I'm not studying at the academy or on my own. To be your student like this Sannin would be an honor, as well as offer me a chance to learn rare jutsu later. Hiruzen blinked at the sudden request, and slowly a smile came to him before he burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, I see, that's what you want, is it? Hiruzen laughed. Well, if you could master the Kage Bunshin at so young an age you'd definitely be noteworthy enough for that honor, and it has been a while since I took on a student, 40 years actually. He said as he stood up from behind his desk and walked over to the right side bookcase and pressed the lower panel and channeled his chakra into it as it opened, revealing an assortment of scrolls, taking one of them as it closed. Hiruzen turned scroll in hand and smirked. Now what to choose as a penalty if you can't, he said as he paused to think before an even bigger smirk came to him. I know now, he said holding the scroll out, if you cannot master the Kage Bunshin within a week from now. Until both you and your brother graduate the academy, you will assist him in cleaning up all of his pranks even if you aren't involved and you aren't to tell him to stop. Kenta blinked and grinned. The answer was obvious, you're on. He said, taking the scroll and opened it and started reading. Hiruzen smirked as he walked back to his desk. You have 1 week. I'll expect the scroll returned then, and you'll start cleaning up your brother's pranks that day as well. Kenta nodded as he read. Don't be so sure, Gigi. I'll have this done in no time. He said before rolling up the scroll. You'd better be ready to start my lessons when I get back, sensei. Oh, and before I forget, can we adjust my training schedule so I can have this day every week off? Hiruzen looked at him curiously for a second. Why is this, my boy? Has something come up? Kenta shook his head. It's just that I have a continuous arrangement that I've got from now on, so I need the day off each week to take care of it. Hiruzen chuckled. Very well, my boy, I'll arrange it with Enko. Now go on, get out of here, and good luck, he said, waving Kenta to leave. Kenta nodded as he walked to the door. You know, Gigi, I can already see how this jutsu will be useful. But I have to ask, with that whole memory and consciousness part, why don't you use them to do your paperwork? It could give you time to do more important matters like training? Kenta said, seeing the blinking form of Hiruzen looking at him. Kenta shrugged. Just a suggestion, he said before closing the door behind him. Hiruzen smacked his forehead. Damn it, why didn't I think of that? He said in a sigh just as an Anbu appeared in a Shenshin. It had a white boar mask with a red streak down its right side. Hokage-sama, your presence is requested in the council chambers. A meeting has been requested. The Anbu informed him with a slightly monotone voice. Hiruzen sighed. Who called for the meeting this time? he asked, rubbing his temple. Both the Elder Council and the civilians sighed. The reason for the meeting was not given. The A and B replied, voice still monotone. Hiruzen nodded. Very well then, let's get this over with, but first, he said as he formed the cross sign and 2 shadow clones formed, you two get started on tomorrow's paperwork and keep working the whole night. After this meeting I'm heading to bed. I haven't had an early night in 5 years. Hiruzen smirked before he disappeared in a shunshin heading for the council chamber. Scene break. Arriving in the council chamber, Hiruzen sighed slight, seeing everyone was already there. The room is a perfect circle with the curved tables in the shape of a horseshoe with a lower area in the middle for anyone called to speak before the council. On one side there was the civilian councilors, the more prestigious of the civilians representing the shops, businesses, banks, farms, families, restaurants, services and public facilities of the village. Towards the end of the desk nearer to the Hokage's seat sat the Elder Council, made up of 3 members to serve as the Hokage's immediate council in times of war. It consisted of Hamura Mitokado, a former teammate of Hiruzen's and member of the now dissolved Team Tobarama. His short hair now gray and receding, showing his aging lines on his forehead more and more each day. His lower jaw now covered by a short gray beard and his frown ever constant. His eyes always half closes past his jade-green glasses. Koharu Yuditane, another former teammate of Hiruzen's and the last member of the now dissolved Team Tobarama. Her gray hair pulled back in 2 buns with golden needle going through them like a dango stick. On the thinner end hangs 2 wind chime-like objects, and on the thicker end was 3 ruby-colored spheres. Her age clearly showing on her face as she has taken to squinting over the years. Both of which wore similar long kimonos in similar gray, brown and black color schemes, each held closed by a gray obi and a pale white sash. The third member of the Elder Council was Danzo Shimura, an old friend to Hiruzen. Though the two have very different views concerning the village's future, he also serves as the Hokage's military advisor in wartime. Though he had the appearance of a frail old man, any experienced shinobi could tell differently by sensing his chakra. He normally walked with a cane and half his face was covered in bandages extending over his right eye. He also has an X-shaped scar on his chin ever since he was young, his attire consisting of a white shirt and black robe covering from his right shoulder to his left hip and down to his feet, with a purple sash tied around his waist. On the other side are the clan heads. First from the Hokage's chair is Shikaku Nara clan head and one of the previous members of the Ino, Shika, Cho trio. He had 2 scars on the right side of his face which were probably his most noticeable feature. He has dark hair tied up into a spiky ponytail, dark eyes as well as a goatee. His ears were also pierced. Like many of the clan heads, he was an active shinobi and as so wore clothing of that of a shinobi. Shikaku wore a meshed shirt underneath his flak jacket, a deerskin coat over that and hand guards. He has a genius-level intelligence, but he's an extremely lazy one, so he tried to get as much sleep when he could. Next was Inoichi Yamanaka, head of the Yamanaka clan and one of the previous members of the Ino, Shika, Cho trio. He was also a valued member of the Torture and Intelligence Division and the Hokage's right-hand man as Shikaku was his left. Inoichi was also a shinobi. He had long ash blonde hair reaching into his back, which he wore spiky on top and ending in a long ponytail, blue-green eyes and strong facial features, which included a well-defined jawline, wearing the standard flak jacket over a black outfit, complete with handguards, forehead protector and a sleeveless red haori. Then was Choza Akimichi, the final member of the Ino, Shika, Cho trio. He is a tall, plump man with long, spiky red hair and purple markings on his cheeks, wearing a samurai-like outfit which entails a black suit completed with armor that has the kanji for food on it, with the addition of a rope belt, handguards, and instead of a forehead protector he wears a hachimaki tied around his head, as most chefs do, as one of the things Akimichi were known for was their restaurants. He also wore a pair of silver, hooped earrings. Next came some Inuzuka, and currently the only female clan head among the clans, but she was not someone you would want to mess with. She has an animalistic look. She has long, spiky, untamed brown hair, vertical slit-like pupils, elongated canine teeth and nails. She also has the clan fawn markings on her cheeks as well as markings over her eyes and a dark shade of purple lipstick. She wears the standard outfit of a Konoha shinobi consisting of flak jacket and a black suit underneath with the sleeves rolled up and bandages around her legs. After her was the more stoic face of Hayashi Hyuga clan head. He has long, dark brown hair and featureless white eyes like all members of his clan, who wield the Byakugan. He normally wears very traditional, loose-fitting robes with a long-sleeved, brown haori. Then there was Fugaku Uchiha, clan head of the Uchiha clan and just like Hayashi rather stoic, his dark brown hair reaching to the base of his neck with the front cut shorter and parted at the front. He wore a simple gray kimono with a white diamond pattern around its neck rim with a pair of gray pants and wooden sandals. And then finally came Shibi Aburame, head of the Aburame clan. Like all members of his clan, has his eyes obscured by dark glasses which feature a single tassel hanging down from one side. He has very spiky short black hair and a mustache, and wears a high-collared outfit. As Hiruzen walked to and took his seat, he noticed someone who normally wasn't present for the meetings. Beside Fugaku stood the smaller form of his young daughter Sayaka Uchiha. Her presence confused him for a moment before deciding to let things play out to find out exactly what was going on as he sighed once more before speaking. Alright, what is the reason behind this meeting? At his words, one of the civilian council members stood up and Hiruzen frowned seeing her, Mabuki Haruno, one of the more vocal members of the civilian side. Mabuki is a fair-skinned woman with shoulder-length, blonde hair with a single bang, which falls down into her face. She also has green eyes and wears a white chipao dress with 3 red circular designs at the bottom of the front of her dress as well as the back. Underneath the dress, she wears pink 3/4 length pants along with brown sandals. Hokage-sama, it has been reported by concerned citizens that one Kenta Uzumaki assaulted 3 civilian children in a small forest area with a sword. The parents of these children wished to press charges for the assault. Mabuki spoke, her tone respectful but confident. After she had spoken, there were a few whispers going round the civilian side, whispers of demons influencing children and such, but they were quickly silenced when Hiruzen cleared his throat, leaking a small amount of sake get the attention back to himself. I see, Hiruzen said before sighing to himself while thinking, I thought this might happen. Are there any witnesses to this alleged attack that can verify the events? Hi, Hokage-sama. The 3 boys reported that Sayaka Uchiha was present in the area at the time of the attack, and it was requested that she was brought here to give her statement before the council on events. Mabuki reported as she sat back down. Fugaku looked to his daughter with his usual cold eyes and gestured for her to step out. She bowed respectfully before walking to the center of the room, her emotions in check like she had been taught to do so during official events. Hiruzen smiled down to the girl before speaking gently. Sayaka, can you please inform us on the events of which we are currently discussing and please don't leave anything out? He asked, giving his best grandfather tone. Uchiha or not, she was still a little girl and this would be a frightening experience for her. Sayaka nodded her head with a small smile before letting it fade as she began to speak. Hi Hokage-sama. I witnessed the events these boys have reported, but what they failed to mention was that it was they themselves who provoked the attack, first by insulting myself and the Uchiha clan. Hearing that, Fugaku's eyes narrowed. He had not been informed of this as his glare leveled on the civilian side as he continued to listen to his daughter testifying. To which Uzumaki-san came to my defense vocally. Then in retaliation the boys insulted his own family, to which Uzumaki-san warned them to stop, but they continued to do so before the first blow was given by Uzumaki-san. The other boys continued to insult him, and he quickly put them both down, only using his own fists. It was the oldest boy who first pulled his weapon and injured Uzumaki-san by slashing at his chin after blinding him with dirt. Though he was easily disarmed and knocked to the ground by Uzumaki-san, followed by the third boy who attacked Uzumaki-san with a rock. It was only then did Uzumaki-san draw his sword as a deterrent to any further actions against him before advising the boys to leave. Sayaka finished giving a head bow. This caused some more whispers to go through the room, most questioning how Kenta had such skill at his age and where he'd gotten the sword. Shibi Abirame then asked a question. Uchiha-san, might I inquire as to why you were in that area to begin with? He asked out of minor curiosity. Sayaka paused for a moment, feeling her two sans gaze on her before she spoke. I go there on my day off from study to relax. The riverside is peaceful and I find it a quiet place to gather my thoughts. The boys in question often decide to try and provoke me into disgraceful actions through insults. When that happens, I normally leave. This time I chose to retort, questioning their own strength if they felt that they needed to be in a group just to come and insult myself. They were on the verge of assaulting myself when Uzumaki-san came to my aid. Hiruzen couldn't help but smirk slightly hearing Sayaka explain. Now I see. So this is where Kenta's fascination of the Sharingan came from and why he wanted this day off every week. It's good to see he's found a friend, Hiruzen thought before clearing his throat. It sounds to me that it is the boys who are in the wrong here. They provoked the incident and were blatantly looking for trouble, and it was one of them who drew and used their weapons first and even injured Kenta as well. An injury I had the chance to inspect less than a few hours ago when he came and reported the incident to me. The injury isn't life-threatening, but will no doubt leave a nasty scar on his face. But Kenta expressed his wish for charges not to be pressed. As such, I recommend the matter is dropped. It was a child's fight that got out of control, nothing more. Fugaku let his scowl drop and closed his eyes before speaking. I second the motion. He spoke out, getting some questioning glances from the other clan heads. Uzumaki-san was acting partially in defense of my daughter and clan, so I will act in defense of him on this matter, he continued before opening his eyes and looking to Hiruzen. Hokage-sama, might I request my thanks for this act be given to Uzumaki-san and my apologies that he was hurt on the matter. Such an outcome was most unfortunate. Hiruzen nodded in acceptance. Very well, I will pass it on the next I see him, he replied, getting a nod from the Uchiha clan head as Sayaka returned to his side. At this point Kohara from the Elder Council spoke up. Be that as it may, there is still the matter of the sword he possessed, where he got it from and the possibility that it might be stolen. Danzo then chose this time to speak as well. Perhaps, it has also come to my attention from an anonymous source that the boy is being trained in secret for the past 3 months, before he's even in the academy. Hiruzen settled a glare on Danzo as his fists clenched. Anonymous source, my ass, he has someone watching them, Or rather, Kenta, what are you plotting? Danzo Hiruzen thought, only to be pulled out of them as Mabuki spoke as well. I was also informed by the librarian that he forced his way into the shinobi library this evening and took scrolls of jutsus and techniques, she said as voices began to circle the room, growing louder. Sayaka meanwhile was listening and wasn't sure what to think of all this. They were talking about someone her age breaking into the library that was for shinobi and guarded by shinobi, and stealing scrolls. Even to her that was ridiculous. She knew firsthand that Kenta has some skill but not enough to pull something like that off. Hiruzen, hearing the final statement, had a scowl on his face which only deepened as the voice grew before he finally decided to silence them as he spoke with a raised voice. Enough, he said as he let out a burst of low sake enough to silence the whole room. These matters are easily answered. 3 months ago Kenta came to me and made a reasonable request for early training before the academy, reasoning that he'd be at a disadvantage from the other children who had parents to get them ready for the academy, and that clan children would even receive training by now. Most clan heads were nodding slightly. Most of them had begun training their children for the academy by teaching them clan techniques, as was tradition to give them time to learn them, so to request early training wasn't much to ask, and given his orphan status he wouldn't have anyone to turn to bar the Hokage for such a request. Hiruzen took a breath before continuing. I found his request to be reasonable, and assigned him a newly promoted chunin to help him get started and get him ready for the academy. The sword was given to him on my orders to arm him and start him on his training. Today he passed the test I gave him on his skill set, and as a reward I gave him access to the shinobi library to further advance his knowledge, under the supervision of his chunin instructor. There was no theft involved in anything, and I will personally look into any such allegations tomorrow morning, as I believe them to be blatant lies. Hiruzen noticed Danzo was about to speak but cut him off. As Hokage, it was under my digression to grant privileges such as have been given Kenta, as his arguments for them were within reason. Hearing his tone, the civilians decided it wise not to dispute his decision, and the clan heads nodded in agreement. Fugaki gave Hiruzen a curious glance which was rare for him. Before speaking, Uzumaki-san sounds like a rather level-headed young man to be able to form such compelling arguments at his age. Hiruzen nodded in agreement that he is. It's sometimes like talking with an adult with him, though he can still act his age at times. Now if that is all, Hiruzen said as he stood up, this meeting is adjourned and I bid you all good night, he said, and then used the shunshin to get away before another topic could be brought up. He went to bed knowing his clones would pick up the paperwork. Scene break 6 days later. Hiruzen was sitting in his office with his feet up as he exhaled smoke from his pipe after another day of form filling. Letting out a breath as he relaxed, the past 6 days had been the most relaxing he'd had in the past 10 years as Hokage. Each day his clones had been on paperwork duty and he hadn't had to do anything but make them for the task, before sitting back and relaxing as he enjoyed his free time. He'd actually been able to train for the first time in a long time, and he wasn't pleased with how poor his condition had been. It would take a lot of work to get him back to his former strength, but he had time now to do so with no rush. He was about to bring out his little orange book and relax further when the door knocked, making him sigh. Another time than he thought before putting the book back into his robes. Come in, he called as the door opened as Kenta walked in with a grin on his face and scroll in his hand. Hiruzen smiled seeing him. Ah, Kenta, it's been 6 days so far. How goes the jutsu? Don't be ashamed coming asking for help. If you want we can call off the bet. Hiruzen started to offer but stopped when he saw Kenta's grin growing even more. Actually, Gigi, I've come to tell you something. Kenta started as he raised his hands up into the familiar cross sign. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he called out before he was covered in smoke, before revealing 3 Kenta standing before an astounded Hiruzen. I've got it down already. Hiruzen was astounded looking at Kenta, only 10 years old, and to have already got the hang of such a high-level ninjutsu like this. Just what are you capable of, Kenta? Hiruzen thought as 2 of the Kentas poofed into smoke, revealing the original grinning like mad, which only served to make Hiruzen chuckle before shaking his head. You never do cease to amaze me, though I suppose I should probably get used to it, my new student. Hiruzen smiled. I haven't had a student for years. It will certainly be nice to relive the experience. Hiruzen, though, before an old smile came to his face, one that had normally made the Sannin shiver when they were younger. But don't think I'll be going easy on you just because you're young. I'm going to work you into a great shinobi. Kenta grinned back before putting his hands together and bowing. I wouldn't have it any other way, Hokage-sensei. Hiruzen chuckled. Enough of that now, call me Sarutobi. As my new student that is only fitting. Now get on home before it gets dark, Hiruzen said as he gestured to the door with a smile. Kenta nodded with a grin. Hi Sarutobi-sensei, he said as he went for the door but stopped. Then Hiruzen called him. Oh Kenta. Kenta turned only to see Hiruzen smiling at him. I'm extremely proud of you. Learning such an advanced jutsu at your age in 6 days is an achievement in itself, Hiruzen said with a proud smile. That was when Kenta grinned even more. Oh, it didn't take me 6 days, I had it done in 2. Kenta said like it was nothing. At that Hiruzen's eyes went wide as he registered what he had just been told. 2 days. He spoke, making sure he heard right. Then why did you wait so long before coming to tell me? Kenta chuckled as he rubbed the back of his head, slightly embarrassed. Well, to be truthful, I kind of lost track of time. Once I was able to hold the clones for an hour, I started to really notice their effects, of how their experiences and memories come back to me, so I kind of went overboard using them to read as much as I could and practice my chakra control. In the beginning I could only create 5 clones, but by day 2 that was up to 50, and by 3 I had 150. I then had them split into groups and start reading everything they could in the library. The librarian nearly had a heart attack when I used the clones there, and we got to work. I think I've read 2 sections already, but there's still so much left. At that moment Hiruzen was doing the fish out of water jutsu, his mouth gaping and his eyes wide at what he was being told. Such a method of training shouldn't have been possible. Well, for normal people that was, normal people with normal chakra reserves. But Kenta, he was beyond the norm. He was an Uzumaki, and if there was one thing they loved to do was break the norm repeatedly. Finally snapping out of his jutsu, Hiruzen chuckled, "Kenta, you are truly one of a kind. Learning that jutsu and in the same day discovering its side effect and making it work for you, I should have expected this from you. Originally this technique was meant for spying and reconnaissance, but to use it as you have isn't something normal people can do due to our reserves, because we could never make enough clones for it to have as great an effect as much as yours can." Kenta grinned. "I kind of figured that out too, Gigi. Well, I'll see you the day after tomorrow, Gigi. Be here at 9 sharp and I'll begin your first lessons, and we'll put your clones to work also," Hiruzen said with a smirk. Kenta nodded. "Hi Sarutobi-sensei," he said before running out the door, heading home, leaving a smirking Hiruzen in his office who shook his head in disbelief. 2 days for a B-rank ninjutsu like the Kage Bunshin, I may just have my work cut out for me. That boy will make a fine shinobi, Hiruzen thought before looking to the picture of the Yondaime Hokage on the wall. You would be proud, Minato, and I'm sure he will rub off on Naruto shortly. Those two are practically inseparable. Time skipped 9 months. In Training Ground 43's training area, Kenta and Anko stood facing off against each other, both smirking at each other, as they both stood in their respective taijutsu stances. Anko in a lower stance, legs apart, right foot in front of her left, fists raised slightly with her back arched ready to attack. Across from her, Kenta stood in his stance, right arm raised horizontal in front of him, palm facing down. His left arm was close to his side, palm facing up, his body at an angle. His fists weren't normal, they were closed into fists, but only to the second joints, leaving the thickest section of the fingers out straight, his thumbs pulled into the open palm. Both were wearing their normal combat attire as Hiruzen watched them from underneath his sun umbrella shade, a small smile on his face as he watched yet another spar between the two. Over the past 9 months Kenta's skills had improved drastically, and in some ways, Hiruzen was sure Kenta was hiding some of his skills, which he approved of fully. Deception is a shinobi's greatest weapon after all. For the past 9 months they'd nothing but train each day, as Kenta soaked up everything they had to teach him, and then some. Guy had returned and working with Kenta had chosen a fighting style for him to learn, and was the style that suited him perfectly. It was the perfect combination of speed and strategic targeting that Kenta had excelled at as he learned how to defeat his opponents with ease. Guy had commented that he'd never seen anyone like Kenta pick up a style so quickly, and that his flames of youth could one day even rival his own, with a blinding sparkle coming off his teeth when he gave his patented nice guy pose, which had inadvertently left Kenta partially blinded for the rest of the week from its brightness. Kenta looked to Anko, his jawline set with a smirk on it, his most prominent feature on display. The scar on his chin only added to his overall badass look, as Anko had commented back when she first saw it. She'd said it made him look much more fearsome, and when he finally became a shinobi he'd likely get more to match it. Kenta couldn't help but smirk as he remembered back when he got the scar and the week after that it was healed. Flashback. Kenta was jumping from rooftop to tree branch heading for the clearing with scrolls in his hands. It was the day after Hiruzen had accepted him as his pupil, and their lessons officially began tomorrow. But for today he had a promise to keep by meeting with Sayaka to train, which was what the 2 scrolls in his hands were for. Landing in the clearing, Kenta took a quick second to scan the area from left to right and back. He was alone and Sayaka wasn't there yet. Kenta shrugged, before making his way over to one of the trees. Well, might as well get the place ready for some real training then. First things first, a kicking post and sparring ring, Kenta thought as he pulled his sword from his waist and started to make his way over to the tree line. 1 hour later, Sayaka was making her way through the trees with a look of disappointment etched on her face as she headed to the clearing. She knew she was late for her training session with Kenta. She had been looking forward to it all week. Finally she would have someone to help her, and she would have been training already had it not been for her Two-san's attempt to stop her leaving. After the incident last week with the boys, he'd been angry with her for not telling him before, and had been close to taking away her 1 day a week off from her studies, or worse, limiting her to only the clan compound. To her that place was like a prison. The majority of the clan followed her Two-san's way of thinking in terms of what a woman's place in shinobi society was. It hadn't been that way under her grandfather, but when her father became clan head after her grandfather's passing, he immediately pulled all Uchiha Kunoichi who were married or in a relationship from service and gave the order for their clan's numbers to be increased to make the clan stronger. Sayaka, of course, knew what that had meant. She was extremely mature for her own age, and her Ka-san had told her all about the birds and the bees along with all that it entailed to prepare her for the life she might one day lead. Her father had begun to looking for a worthy Uchiha to marry her off to when she gets older. When he found one, he'd have her begin a whole other set of lessons about and pleasing her future husband. But that wouldn't be for years, not that she was looking forward to it in the slightest. All the boys in her clan, save for Itachi and Sure Sway, were just like their Tusans who respected her Tusan's opinion on women, so she would end up with someone who would treat her like a second-class whore no matter what she did. Shaking her head, she just tried to forget about it all. It was in the future, and not a concern right now. Instead, she focused on the training she was going to be doing thanks to her Ka-san arguing with her Tusan on the topic of her day off and her eldest brother telling her to run while he was distracted, giving her the opening to escape. She knew her Tusan would be angry, but she also knew her Ka-san and Nichan could handle him. Her Ka-san hadn't been an elite jonin in her prime for nothing. That had been one of the reasons she had discovered that her Tusan had called for all kunoichi in relationships and marriages to retire, because she'd surpassed him in rank while he was just a jonin. Plus her Nichan was an ANBU captain on top of that. She'd found his weasel mask one day along with his captain's band when she went into his room looking for his Pocky stash, so she wasn't worried. As she approached the clearing, she started hearing noises coming from ahead of her, the sound of repeated thumping and grunts of effort. As she got closer, she was able to make out a figure in the area, and she immediately started blushing seeing Kenta ahead of her in the area. He was repeatedly kicking a large portion of a tree trunk that looked to have a large portion of it buried beneath the ground, keeping it in place. But the thing Sayaka was blushing at was the fact that Kenta was training shirtless and only his trousers and boots on. His shirt and flat jacket hanging off his sword just a bit to the left as Kenta swapped from right leg to left as he rotated his kick on the wooden post. He also had black wrappings from his upper forearms down to his hands for their protection. He had obviously been at it a while, as his body was glistening with sweat from his exercise, and Sayaka had to stifle back a small moan seeing him. He wasn't a Hulk by any means, but his body was built in a way that showed the results from his training. Not a bit of body fat, all lean muscle from training, with some slight scarring here and there that only added to his overall look. He was fit, very very fit. Sayaka quickly found herself watching Kenta with some fascination as she remembered her Ka-san's talk about the men and women and couldn't help but let her mind imagine what it would be like. But as soon as she thought it, her face went beet red like a tomato before she shook her head rapidly. No. Bad, Sayaka, bad. Keep those thoughts out. No. You only just met him once, and he called me cute. Maybe no, bad, Sayaka. No, lewd thoughts were too young for that sort of thing. Sayaka raged in her mind as she tried to bring herself back to why she was here. After several moments of steadying her breathing, she continued her way into the clearing but couldn't help but bite the inside of her lip as she continued to look at Kenta's shirtless form. Coming out from the trees, Kenta caught sight of her and smirked seeing her as he stopped kicking and turned to wave. Sayaka returned it but bit down on her lip, nearly making it bleed when she got a full frontal look of Kenta without his shirt and mentally screamed, "Dear Kami, he's gorgeous." As she watched him move for his shirt, frowning slightly as he covered up, but said a silent prayer of thanks when she saw his shirt was practically clinging to him like a second skin. "You're late," Kenta said as he finished pulling on his shirt and turning to Sayaka with a smirk. Sayaka frowned. "Sorry, but my Bakatu-san tried to ground me to the clan compound after last week with those boys. Things have been a bit rocky at home the past week." Kenta nodded in understanding. "It's okay, no harm done. I just took the time to get the place set up for us and get some training in myself," he said, gesturing to look around. Sayaka looked around, and she blinked at what she saw. She hadn't really been looking around them before as other things distracted her, but now that she could see he had completely set up a small training area. Several trees had been cut down, and there was a 2 kicking posts set up with 10 meters in between them. There were a number of logs tied together and stacked in a pile with multiple targets carved into them for throwing practice. A small sitting area with 2 smaller posts for seats around a series of slightly taller posts bound together as a table, with 2 scrolls sitting on it. She was really impressed he had done all this in an hour by himself. All she could say was wow. Kenta chuckled. "It's not really that much, it's just the start of what we'll need to get to the basics. Come on, I got some things for us to start with. I'm assuming you already know how to use your chakra?" Sayaka nodded. "Yeah, Itachi-nichan showed me how to when I asked him, and he even showed me how to start getting better control of it. But he's been really busy, so he hasn't had time to show me anything else, and anytime he could Sasuke was there, so he didn't want to risk Tusan finding out." Kenta scowled hearing that. "Damn, that sucks. Well, don't worry, I'll help you as best I can. I've got scrolls from the library all about chakra control and loads of other things too, so you're in good hands." Sayaka blinked, remembering the meeting a week back about how Kenta had been accused of stealing scrolls from the shinobi library and how the Hokage had dismissed the claims by explaining Kenta's early training for the academy. This would be her chance to finally learn. She wasn't allowed in the Uchiha Jutsu library due to her age, and mostly if her father caught her she'd really be in trouble then with his views. She'd been planning to ask her Ka-san or Itachi to try and get her something, but with this now she didn't have to risk it or risk getting them in trouble for her. Kenta opened the 2 scrolls and unsealed the contents, one being from his first visit to the library, and the second from 2 days prior when he had gone again to do another sweep of the jutsu section just in case he'd find something he'd missed the first time, and boy had he. He'd failed to notice the back section with a couple of sweet jutsu, though he doubted very much that Sayaka would be able to do them with her likely chakra level. Though he did pick up some fire jutsu after reading that's what most Uchiha's prime affinities were, so he thought that would be something she'd like to learn. Plus he was willing to give it a go himself even if he had different affinities. Seeing the large pile of scrolls, Sayaka's eye widened. There were so many. She mentally jumped for joy with excitement looking over each of the scroll's labels. She was so spoiled for what to start with first. Did she want to start with something small or just go right for something large? She started to think, but then stopped when a light blue-ended scroll caught her eye. It was smaller than the rest, and it intrigued her. Reaching out, she took the scroll and opened it. Her eyes immediately widened. It was a scroll for Iryo Ninjutsu, medical ninjutsu, and her heart soared to new heights. This was her chance. Kenta saw Sayaka's eyes sparkle slightly with excitement as she opened the Iryo Ninjutsu scroll. He recognized it straight off and he smirked. Iryo Ninjutsu, interesting choice. I picked that up when I was thinking about learning some to treat some of my smaller wounds from training. You interested in learning some? Sayaka immediately nodded as she kept reading. Absolutely. I've always wanted to learn this. You see, when Sasuke and I were born, he was the strong one, born perfect with no problem. While I was born 4 months later, doctors called it a delayed interval birth, so I was born weaker. The doctor said I had a very slim chance of living past my first week, but it was because of the Iryo Ninjutsu specialists that I was saved. My Ka-sen always thanks them every time she sees them because without them I wouldn't be here. It's because of that I want to be one too, not just to help others but to prove my two-sen wrong that I can be strong. Kenta smirked. Well, if that's the road you want to go down, then I'll help you. I was just letting you see what options are available before we began your physical training and started teaching you the basics. That's how my sensei taught me, by starting from the bottom, making sure I was ready. But if you're dead set on Iryo Ninjutsu, then I don't see why we couldn't take a look-see and let you have a small look at what it involves. Nodding enthusiastically, Sayaka kept reading the scroll with excitement, looking over just what the jutsu involved. It was listed as a simple healing technique, a C-rank medical jutsu for beginners to learn, teaching them how to gather and convert chakra into medical chakra for healing. It was perfect jutsu for her to start with. Sayaka found it somewhat difficult to do at first, but after an hour of reading and practicing the 3 necessary hand signs as well as gathering and converting her chakra, she finally was able to do it as the chakra gathered into a small white orb in her hand, and she looked at it full of pride as she let it fade. Right, time to practice, I suppose? She said as she took the kunai Itachi had given her and was about to cut her hand to practice healing when Kenta grabbed her hand, stopping her. Sayaka looked at him in confusion. What are you doing? I need to practice. Kenta smirked. Then why not use me then? He said before pointing to the healing slash on his chin. No sense in creating new wounds when there's still old ones that need healing. So what do you say? Want to try me as your first patient? Sayaka looked at him with some shock but then smiled. If she was able to heal him, it would make her feel a bit better for him getting hurt while defending her the other week. She nodded. Sure, thanks for this, she said, moving to his side as he tilted his head slightly, letting her get better access to the underside of his chin. Taking a deep breath, Sayaka exhaled as she raised her hands, making the hand signs rat ram dog, and started channeling her chakra as she converted it, making the small white orb. She then raised her hands and chakra to the closed-over wound and she repeated the scroll's process in her head. Control the chakra, maintain the flow. Just a little, not a lot, she said over and over again in her head as she pushed the medical chakra into the wound, remembering what the scroll had said about control and consistency. She had to control the speed of which the chakra was flowing and maintain it at a slow pace so the wound would heal at a slow, constant rate so as not to scar over too fast, and it would scar over, and she wanted to get it perfect. However, since this is her first time using the jutsu, or any jutsu for that matter, and she didn't have the best control either, so she put too much into it as the wound closed up fast, leaving a rather noticeable jagged scar on his chin. Sayaka cancelled the jutsu and lowered her hands and frowned, seeing the scar. She flinched as Kenta pulled the kunai and tilted it to use it as a makeshift mirror to see his chin. She'd expected him to yell at her for not doing it right and leaving him with the scar, so she was shocked when he smirked. Alright, nice scar, this makes me look like a real badass now. Talk about sweet, Kenta said, running his finger over his scar, smirking. Sayaka frowned. But it wasn't meant to leave a scar. I didn't do it right, she said, looking down in failure. Kenta put the kunai away and put his hand on her shoulder. Hey, enough of that. So what about a little scar? It was your first attempt, you can't hope to get it first try. I'm betting not even Tsunade Senju of the Sannin, the creator of Iryo Ninjutsu, got it right on the first try. Plus Gigi said this would scar anyway, so it's no big deal, he said, trying to cheer her up. Sayaka looked at him with a slight smile. Really? I was just trying to help you since you helped me. Are you still okay with this? Kenta smirked. Relax, there's no need to get stressed, I'm just glad I could help. I'm sure you'll get it eventually. It was a C-rank jutsu after all. Most academy students don't even learn them until they're genin, and neither of us are in the academy yet. All you need is practice and you'll get it down in no time, he said, reassuring her as she started to smile again at his kind words. Kenta lifted the scroll and read it before closing it up. Right, I think we should start by making sure you've got the academy basic jutsu down before we go back to any medical jutsu, so that your control will be much better, and it will be easier for you when you do learn it. Sayaka nodded, hearing his reasoning. Now she had felt stupid expecting to get it right on the first go. It was a C-rank after all, and she'd seen how hard Sasuke had been practicing the Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu, Fire Release, Grand Fireball Jutsu, under their two sands watch at the lake. It was the rite of passage for all Uchiha who would be shinobi. She had wanted to learn it as well but knew her Tusen would never let her. Sasuke had been practicing it for weeks to get it right, and he still got burnt when he used it, and it was the same rank as the medical jutsu. She knew it would take time for her to get it right but she wouldn't give up. Looking to Kenta with a newfound passion she smiled. Where do we begin? Kenta, seeing her passion, couldn't help but smirk. Well, first things first, your physical tour, I mean physical conditioning, he said with a grin that made Sayaka gulp slightly as she remembered him telling her about his sensei being a bit of a sadist, and at that moment was slightly worried that it might have rubbed off on him. She was about to find out just how right she was. Flashback end. Coming out of his thoughts, Kenta brought up his arm to block a straight right from Enko, who was smirking at him. Keep yourself sharp, Gaki. Enko chuckled only to gasp as Kenta quickly moved, swerving his arm around hers and gripped her forearm and pulled her forward, flipping her over him as he swooped under her, using her momentum against her. I'm always sharp, Enko. Try to remember that, Kenta retorted before he jumped up into the air, dodging a low leg sweep from Enko as she righted herself in midair and landed on the ground. Oh, I do, but even the sharpest blade can chip. Enko smirked back as she brought her arms together and blocked a high kick that Kenta sent her way mid-jump. The force of it knocked Enko back a bit, but using the momentum swung herself around and went to kick Kenta, who was still in the air. Kenta saw the kick coming and smirked. She had left herself open. Reacting quickly to the kick, Kenta caught it in the air as it brought him to the ground. But he used the chakra in his legs to stop himself while still holding on to Enko's leg before moving faster than the snake charmer could react to, and delivered several quick jabs up the inside of Enko's inner left thigh while holding her right leg. The second he did, Enko's left knee caved and she dropped to the ground with a thud, motor control in her left leg completely gone, leaving her defenseless on the ground as Kenta froze, standing over her, his fist in position to deliver a final strike with a smirk on his face. Perhaps Enko, but not today. Before Enko could respond, Hiruzen stood up from his seat, clearing his throat. That's enough. Victory goes to Kenta, he called with a pleased smile on his face, seeing his student progress so fast. Hearing his sensei's command, Kenta relaxed his stance and stood normally before delivering a quick series of non-painful jabs to Enko's thigh as it tensed before relaxing again as Enko felt her motor functions return to her. Damn it, Gaki, you got me good that time. Just 9 months with that taijutsu of yours and you're already at the top of your game. Whatever Guy is doing with you during his time is paying off. The now 19-year-old Enko smirked as she got up. Thanks for that, Enko. But we both know that you'd have me beat easily in a real fight when you can use your snakes in conjunction with your taijutsu. I still have a long way to go yet, Kenta said as turned and put his right fist in his left palm and bowed in Hiruzen's direction, getting a raised hand as a gesture to relax from his sensei. Always so humble, Kenta, Hiruzen said as he walked over to the pair. That is a good thing. Arrogance and overconfidence in one's skill can lead to your downfall. However, do not doubt yourself. For someone of your age, defeating a Tokubetsu Jonin like Enko here in a taijutsu-only spar is something to be proud of. Arigato, sensei, Kenta said, bowing again. But I would never have become this strong without both yours and Gai-san's assistance and teachings. It is because of you three that I am as strong as I am. Hiruzen shook his head. Our lessons would have meant little to nothing if it weren't for your striving, Kenta. It's your will of fire that burns for greatness, my young pupil. Kenta smiled hearing his sensei's praise before bowing once more. Arigato, sensei. Hiruzen nodded in response before taking another pull of smoke from his pipe and exhaling. I think that will be enough sparring for today. There's another subject I was hoping to introduce you to in line with your training, Hiruzen said before looking to Enko. Enko, you may return to your duties or take the rest of the day off if you wish. Enko bowed to Hiruzen. Hi, Hokage-sama, she said before looking to Kenta. See you later, Gaki, she said before disappearing in a shunshin with a knowing smirk. Kenta's eyebrow twitched in annoyance before looking to Hiruzen. You've still got to show me how to do that, he said with a somewhat irritated tone. Enko had been reluctant to teach the shunshin to Kenta due to him being so eager to learn it, and used it to taunt him constantly. Hiruzen chuckled. In due time, Kenta, he said before turning and gestured for Kenta to come to him before placing his hand on Kenta's shoulder before the pair disappeared into a shunshin of Hiruzen's own. Scene break. Arriving in the Hokage's office via shunshin, Kenta had to keep himself from falling flat on his face at the sudden chance to his equilibrium. Moving at such speeds was something he'd have to get used to. After getting his footing back, he looked to the sofas at the back of the room to find 6 of his Kage bunshins sitting on them patiently with a stack of scrolls to the left of both sofas, showing they were finished reading them. With a nod of his head, Kenta released the jutsu and all 6 bunshins went up in puffs of smoke as Kenta then closed his eyes as he felt the chakra and memories come to him and he filtered through the new information that flooded his brain after the bunshins had taken to reading the scrolls Hiruzen had left for them, which contained the history of the Konoha and that of the shinobi wars and other nations, along with multiple battle strategy guides and methodologies, the beginner's guide to shogi, and the complete fundamentals of jutsu and its 3 parts: ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu. Rubbing his head at the sudden influx of information, Kenta groaned slightly from the now growing migraine as Hiruzen chuckles as he pours the tea he had brewing, getting Kenta's attention as he smelled the scent, Genmei-katia. It was Kenta's favorite for its almost popcorn-like taste. Handing Kenta the cup, Hiruzen smiled. You've come a long way in such a short time, Kenta, and it's only been a year so far. Your growth sometimes is quite scary when I imagine what strength you will hold when you are older. At this rate you will no doubt surpass myself. Taking a sip of the tea, Kenta smiled. It's all because of the teachings from you, Enko, and Gai Sarutobi-sensei. I wouldn't be this strong if it weren't for the three of you training me. Hiruzen nodded with a slight smile. You give us too much credit, Kenta, he said before sitting down and gesturing for Kenta to do the same. Tomorrow I intend to start teaching you a new subject of sorts, one that I believe will benefit you greatly, and that you should be able to take to with ease, Hiruzen said with a confident smile. With a confident and intrigued look of his own, Kenta grinned at the prospect of learning something new. What will I be studying, Sarutobi-sensei? Hiruzen grinned. Tell me, Kenta, have you ever heard of the term fuinjutsu? Or more specifically the art of sealing and making seals? Kenta looked at him with some curiosity, remembering what he'd read so far, and slowly nodded. The art that was practiced by the Yondaime Hokage and is practiced by the Gamma Sannin Jiraiya, one of your other students, and one of the Sannin, who is currently the only seal master in the village. Hiruzen nodded. I see you remember your studies. Hiruzen smirked. Yes, the very same. Although fuinjutsu is much more than just sealing objects away, there is a whole other side to it that the world has forgotten over time due to the lack of those learning it, and because of this most take this forgotten art for granted. Hiruzen finished taking a sip of his tea, which is why I was hoping you would take it and make it part of your arsenal. As my student I will be able to help you get started. Though I am not a master myself, I do know the art to some extent, and there are detailed scrolls to help you where I cannot. Also, when Jiraiya-kun eventually returns, he will be able to help you progress further. I'm sure he'd love to help his kohai. Kenta started to think and nodded more and more as a grin grew on his face as Hiruzen kept talking. If it's as powerful as you say it is, Sarutobi-sensei, then I will gladly learn it and become a master like Jiraiya-senpai, Kenta said before chuckling at a thought. If it's as rarely used as you say, I might even consider taking it on as a family secret, and then me and my brother could start our own clan one of these days. Ha ha ha. Kenta said, laughing slightly at the idea. Hiruzen laughed with him at the idea. Yes, wouldn't that be something? He said aloud while thinking. If only you knew your origins, but sadly I can't tell you. Maybe someday though I will. But this is all I can do to set you on the path for now. Scene break. After finishing the tea, Kenta had bid his sensei good evening and left for home to see Naruto. Getting to his apartment, Kenta opened the door and came in yawning after the tiring day. Slipping off his shinobi boots and taking off his flak jacket, he hung it up before making his way into Naruto's apartment via the joining door, walking past 5 other of his bunshins who were sitting meditating on his bed waiting to be dispelled. Opening the door into his brother's apartment, he glanced to the kitchen, seeing the 6th bunshin already cooking their dinner as Naruto lay on his bed with his prank book out as he wrote in it furiously. Kenta chuckled. Evening, Ototo. I see you're hard at work, he said, letting Naruto know he was back. Naruto turned to look at him so fast Kenta was sure he almost snapped his neck. Ni-chan, he called before getting up and rushing over to his older sibling, who held out his arms for the hug he knew was coming as they greeted each other. Because of Kenta's training, he was now a good 3 inches taller in height compared to Naruto, though Naruto was still growing and was eating correctly, which Kenta was making sure of, knowing his Ototo would eat nothing but ramen for breakfast, lunch, dinner and dessert, along with every mealtime in between if he didn't. Granted, the same could be said of Kenta when it came to Dango and Paki, mainly thanks to the 2 main women in his life getting him hooked, bringing food to their training sessions. Rustling Naruto's hair, Kenta then looked to his bunshin and nodded as it poofed from existence, making Kenta grin from his new memories of his bunshin's day with Naruto. Kenta laughed slightly. I see we've had fun today. An extra strength stink bomb in the marketplace? Really funny, but you can do better than that, Kenta said as he shook his head at Naruto's antics. His bunshin had helped plant several of the rather foul canisters around the large market area, and then both had hid using the Kakuremino no Jutsu, cloak of invisibility technique, and watched the ensuing chaos as they were set off as people ran from the stench as the area was abandoned for 2 hours until the smell had dissipated. Naruto grinned at his brother's approval. Oh, I know. I've got a bunch of other ideas planned for tomorrow, and some really big ones as well that I know you'll love, Naruto said with an excited grin. Kenta laughed and shook his head. I can't wait. Just make sure you and my bunshin don't get caught or seen. The last thing I need is Sarutobi-sensei giving me grief for whatever you've got planned, he said with a smirk. Naruto stepped back in mock hurt with a look of vain shock. I'm offended you'd even think such a thing. When do I ever get caught? Naruto stated in mock hurt with pride of his stealth skills, which had only increased in the last 9 months after Kenta had helped him get the Kakuremino no Jutsu, cloak of invisibility technique, down to an art form he could do is so well. Kenta crossed his arms with a raised eyebrow and smirk. Would you like that list in alphabetical or chronological order? He asked with a growing chuckle as Naruto's head sunk, pride now gone at Kenta reminding him of the hundreds of times he was caught before learning that technique. I meant in the past 9 months, Ni-chan. Naruto pouted, making Kenta ruffle his hair again in apology. Sorry, Ototo couldn't resist. Why don't you start dishing supper out while I go and deal with my bunshins? Kenta said with a smile. Naruto instantly cheered up. Sure, Ni-chan, you're still going to teach me how to do that bunshin thing, right? Kenta chuckled. Of course, Ototo. What kind of Ni-chan would I be if I didn't help my Ototo? He laughed. But only when we're in the last year of the academy, As much as I'd love to teach it to you now, I don't think the villagers or Sarutobi-sensei would thank me for releasing a horde of pranking blondes on the village. With the chaos just one of you can cause, imagine what 100 of you would be able to do. Kenta explained, only for both him and Naruto to shiver with excitement and slight pity for the villagers in the following months after Naruto learns that jutsu. Kenta turned to go back into his apartment, leaving Naruto chuckling evilly with a wicked look in his eye, already scheming for his future pranking spree. Coming into his room, he looked to his bunshins and sighed before canceling the jutsu, instantly regretting it as he gripped his head in pain. Ow, 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 ow. Major headache, Kenta thought as he felt like his head was going to explode. After 3 minutes, Kenta finally felt the pain subside and sighed. Well, that was a pain as always, but at least I got a few jutsu memorized out of it. I'll practice them tomorrow after lessons with sensei. But for now, Kenta thought as he opened his bedside table, taking out a small box and opening it and taking out a chocolate-covered biscuit stick, licking his lips. Ah, Pocky, how I've waited for thee. Scene break. The sun shines in Kenta's bedroom window the next morning just as his alarm goes off. Kenta sits up with a groan and starts to get ready for the day. Getting out of bed, the covers fall over him, showing he was only wearing his loose long-legged pajama bottoms, leaving his chest bare, showing his well-refined form from all his training, with only some light scars on him from when he was just starting training. The most noticeable one being that of a scar on his right shoulder area. It was wider than the others, a stab wound that had healed and was one of the few he didn't get from training. After going through his normal morning routine of getting ready for the day, he finished getting washed and dressed before forming the signature cross-hand sign before calling out Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, as 3 bunshins were created in front of him, standing to attention awaiting orders. Looking to the first bunshin, Kenta began to give out their orders for the day. You're on study duty. Create 4 other bunshins once I'm gone, and then pull 4 scrolls each from our last library visit and get to reading. Kenta said before looking to the second bunshin. You are on practical. Go to the practice area and make 6 bunshin each and pick a separate jutsu and have them make 25 bunshins each and get to work practicing the 5 jutsu we memorized yesterday, and have the 6th group practice running through hand signs. I need to be able to do them faster until I have them mastered so I can use jutsu without them. Dispel the 3rd and 2nd sets of bunshins to yourselves every hour and repeat the process until I arrive after lessons with Sarutobi-sensei. And then finally the 3rd, you're on Naruto duty. Keep him out of trouble and make him his meals. No more than 5 bowls of ramen at lunch. I swear that boy would live off it if he could, and make sure he eats at least 1 vegetable ramen, getting 3 high. From the bunshins, he dismissed them to start. 1 bunshin going into Naruto's apartment to start breakfast, another going to start on the scrolls, and the 3rd walked out to go to the training field. Kenta was about to leave also when the practical bunshin came back and holding 2 parcels. These were on the doorstep. Taicho, the bunshin said, handing the parcels to him, looking at them with some curiosity and some scrutiny, not sure if it was safe to open them before he saw to the paper pinned to them. Tried to keep warm out there, Gigi. Kenta smirked. Sarutobi-sensei. Setting the parcels down on the bed, he opened the one addressed to him and grinned, seeing its contents. A jet black flak jacket like the one he had, but with a black hood and short sleeves with red fur lining around the hood and the sleeves. The back had a red circle with a white swirl in it, like the Chunin and Jonin flak jackets he'd seen. Kenta immediately took off his older flak jacket and pulled on the newer one and zipped it up, pulling the hood over his head, liking the fur lining. Thanks, Gigi. Opening the other package, Kenta cringed slightly as he saw the contents. A neon orange tracksuit with white woolen neck collar and blue detailing, with a similar swirl emblem on the right shoulder. Kenta chuckled. Well, he did say orange was his favorite color. I'm sure he'll love it, although I'm definitely taking him to get a new outfit when we're genin. For a shinobi, this just screams I'm here, kill me now. Kenta thought as he laid the tracksuit down on the bed with the note and went to walk out, but not before grabbing a box of Pocky for the morning warm-up session. Scene break. Hokage office. Hiruzen was sitting comfortably in his office while 4 Kage bunshins worked around his desk on the piles of paperwork as the original put his feet up and was giggling slight, reading a little orange book. Feeling the rush of morning air from a newly opened window, Hiruzen closed the book and slipped it back into his robes before looking to the window to see the panting form of Kenta trying to catch his breath. Hiruzen smiled seeing him. Ah, Kenta, how was your morning run? He asked as Kenta sat on the window ledge. Enjoyable as always. Kenta replied, panting heavily. Please give me a moment. 20 laps of the village can take it out of you. Hiruzen chuckled. You certainly have taken to Guy's workout routine with a passion. Not many can keep up with him. Come sit down and have some tea while you begin this morning lessons. Basics of Fuinjutsu, body seals. Taking a final pant, Kenta pushed off the window ledge into the office. I may be able to keep up, but I still say he's insane doing 20 laps on his hands. I stopped after 3 and did the rest on my feet. Kenta said before sitting down and seeing the open scroll on the table, and after reading the first few lines he began growing more and more interested by the second. Seeing the interest in Kenta's eye, Hiruzen chuckled to himself as he poured their tea, hook, line and sinker. 5 hours later, after reading the first scroll 3 times over, Kenta had created 4 more Kage bunshins, each of which were sitting on the floor reading through other scrolls with notepads beside them as they noted down anything of interest that they found in them, each already with 2 filled pads each behind them stacked in a pile. The original sat between another 4 bunshins on the other side of the room with an ink brush in hand as he and his doppelgangers practiced calligraphy and had been for the past 4 hours getting every stroke perfectly in place for when they would begin the physical practice sessions, as his sensei had told him that perfect calligraphy is the first step in becoming a Fuinjutsu master, as it's a major part of the style. It helped that Kenta's handwriting was already near perfect. Standing over the practicing bunshins and Kenta, Hiruzen nodded seeing their progress as he blew out smoke from his pipe before speaking. "That's enough, my boy. Disperse your practicing bunshins before doing the same with the researching group and we'll see what you've come up with." Kenta nodded before closing his eyes as the 2 groups went up in smoke, making Kenta wince slightly from the hit of information as he began to sort through it, after several moments of which he opened his eyes with a shocked look. "That could be useful," he said aloud, remembering one of the ideas his bunshins had from moments before dispelling. The sudden interest caught Hiruzen's attention. "What would that be, my boy?" he asked, wondering what had intrigued Kenta so much. Using his bunshins' memories, Kenta went over to the scrolls and pads and began to look through them to find the passage and notes his bunshin had made on them before smirking as he found them and laid them out in front of his sensei. Weight, restriction, and gravity seals, or more specifically their uses in training the body's muscles. Looking at the boy in slight shock, Hiruzen then began to browse the very detailed notes the bunshin had made. Originally, shinobi had used chakra weights to train, though not many used them anymore as they were considered almost to be medieval due to the strain they put on the body. Hiruzen knew of only one shinobi, Guy, who still used them in his training, and the results were nothing to laugh at, and it would appear the weight seals could be used in a similar fashion to the physical weights where chakra was pumped into them to increase the weight. Then there were the gravity and restriction seals. Both were something Hiruzen had never even contemplated on using for training. They had been created solely for the prison system and applied to only the most dangerous of prisoners in order to slow them down and make it impossible for them to even attempt an escape. When activated fully, the prisoner was forced to the ground by the gravity seal, increasing the gravity field around his body, and the restriction seals made it impossible for them to even lift a finger. But on their lower levels, Hiruzen could see the potential Kenta saw in them for advancing his physical training. Nodding as he reviewed the idea, Hiruzen smiled. "This is quite an ingenious use you have found for these seals, Kenta. Rather dangerous in some ways, but also very creative," Hiruzen said as he lifted the scroll, making a more detailed examination of the arrays. "I assume you want to use this in your physical training from now on?" Hiruzen asked, seeing they weren't that complicated that he'd be able to apply them without calling back Jiraiya to do them. Kenta nodded in response. "Hi, sensei, they'd be a method of continuous training even when I'm not in practice. I'd still be wearing them, and even a short walk would be beneficial with them on." Hiruzen nodded. "Very well then, I'll apply them to you," Hiruzen said as he stood up and took out the jar of chakra ink from the box he'd prepared for Kenta's training and popped the top. "Remove your top and roll up the bottom of your trouser legs. The weight seals will be on each limb and one on your chest, while the restriction and gravity seals will be on your back," Hiruzen informed him as Kenta followed his sensei's instructions and removed his clothing, rolling up his trouser legs after allowing Hiruzen access to apply the seals. "While I am doing this, I want you to begin reciting the key aspects of seals and Fuinjutsu, their purposes and uses in a battle," Hiruzen ordered as he started on Kenta's right wrist. 2 hours later, after the long wait, Hiruzen was finally finished applying the seals to Kenta's body. The weight seals were intricate bands around his wrists and ankles with a small space left between 2 spiral rings where Hiruzen said a number would appear in regards to how much weight was applied to each, which varied on the amount of chakra put into them. There was a much larger version applied around Kenta's waist area, positioned in a way so as not to interfere with the gravity and restriction seals on his back, both of which were in the shape of multiple-sided shapes, the gravity taking the form of a large hexagonal ring with the number 0 in the center, and the restriction taking the form of an octagonal ring with the same 0 in the center, both number registering what level the seal was set to at that moment. After standing still for so long, Kenta began to flex his shoulders as Hiruzen came around the front of him. "They're all finished. They should work without a problem. All you have to do is focus your chakra into your back area and call out your seal and then the level you wish to have the seal set to. Why don't you try it out for now, but don't go beyond level 1 for the moment. I have some idea on how to work with them to get the most out of your training." Kenta nodded as he raised his hands into a ram sign and began to channel chakra into the seals on his back. "Gravity and restriction seals, level 1. He spoke and his eyes instantly widened as he felt his body get heavy and he had to put some serious effort into moving. "Damn, this stuff really works," Kenta said in a slightly strained voice. Hiruzen nodded. "I think it would be best to cancel them for now while we work with your weight seals," Hiruzen informed him. "Simply deactivated them as you would any jutsu." Kenta nodded as he channeled chakra again and called out, "Kai," as he felt the pressure lifted off him and made it easier to move as he flexed his shoulders from the strain. Hiruzen nodded. "Very good, now, the weights will be slightly more tricky, I think. Kenta, I want you to channel the smallest amount of chakra you can into your right wrist seal and then tap the seal with your other hand to activate it." Kenta nodded and looked to his right wrist, and he began to channel his chakra as Hiruzen watched him move to tap it, before Kenta regretted doing so as the seal flashed and Kenta found himself being pulled by his wrist and slammed to the ground by the sudden weight increase. "OW, what the hell?" Kenta yelled in pain from hitting the ground. Hiruzen stifled a chuckle at his student's mishap before shaking his head. I was afraid of this. It would seem that your extreme chakra reserves are affecting your chakra control greatly, and you put too much chakra into the seals and it's affecting just how much weight they act as. Take a look at the number. Kenta looked to the seal on his wrist and his eyes widened, seeing a 5,000 pounds in the space. Kenta frowned. Does this mean the weights are useless to me? He asked with some disappointment. Hiruzen shook his head. No, it doesn't. It just means that I will have to apply the chakra to the seal until you have enough control to do it yourself, and it also means you will have to drastically increase your chakra control lessons to this extent. He said as he came over and tapped the seal, releasing the chakra stored in it, and channeled his own into them as the 5,000 changed to 15 as Kenta got to his feet once again, as Hiruzen went about applying the same 15 to each of Kenta's limbs, and then a 40 to his waist. There we go. That should be enough to improve your training for now. Hiruzen said as he went to behind his desk. Kenta, I want you to train with those weights for now only. Once you've trained to the extent you can no longer feel the strain, I want you to activate the first level of your restriction seal and repeat the process, as you slowly increase the restriction level each time you no longer feel the weights. Only once you've reached level 5 on the restriction seal will you deactivate before activating the gravity seal's first level, and repeat the restriction seal cycle as you progress up the levels of gravity like you did the restriction seal. Once its level 5 has been reached, you will deactivate the both seals and increase the weights until you can feel the once more, and the process will repeat. This will be how you will train your body from now on. Any questions? Kenta understood the training regimen perfectly. He had similar ideas and understood why Hiruzen didn't want him going beyond level 5. Because each time the effects doubled, and going beyond level 5 on Ether Seal could affect his growth at his age. Hi Sensei, I understand, and I would like to ask if you knew of any additional chakra control methods I could use to improve my control for the future. Pausing for a moment, Hiruzen stroked his beard as a smile came to him. I think I have just the method that you're looking for, Kenta. He said, getting up and going to the bookshelves again, taking out a scroll that looked like a Iryo Ninjutsu scroll, before handing it to Kenta. This is a method developed years ago for Iryo ninjas, both an advanced level of chakra control and as a way to create large chakra reserve to allow the Iryo nin to treat more injuries. Though I know of only one person who still uses it, that person being my second student Tsunade Senju. If you can master this technique, then your chakra control will increase dramatically. Kenta smiled, looking at the scroll, thinking of another that he could help with this scroll. Arigato Sensei, this will help a lot. Hiruzen nodded. It's not a problem, Kenta. This is what senseis are for. Now I believe that is enough for today. Go and enjoy the rest of your day. I'm sure you've had your bunshins working overtime while you were here, so you'd better see to them. Kenta chuckled while rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. Hi, Arigato Sensei, Kenta said before smirking, and waved the tiger hand sign before disappearing into a whirlwind of red and black feathers as the window closed behind him as he left. Hiruzen just blinked at his sudden disappearance, and then chuckled. So he learned the Shunshin no Jutsu on his own then, and even personally modified it. That boy continues to amaze me, he thought to himself before going back to reading a certain little orange book. Scene break. Training Ground 43. Arriving in the training ground via Shunshin, Kenta smirked, seeing his bunshins all lying across the area, tuckered out from training, completely exhausted. Kenta walked into the area before calling out his command. All right, recall to me in order of creation. He commanded, getting sighs of relief from each bunshin as they dispersed in waves, leaving only himself and the one he had created that morning as it sorted the memories for him before dispersing, giving them and the leftover chakra to him, making Kenta grin. That's definitely a better way of doing things, no headache, he said aloud as he slotted the chakra control scroll into a loop on his flak jacket before looking towards one of the wooden posts that had been created for target practice. Time to test what I've learned, Kenta thought to himself before flashing through a series of hand signs as he sprinted at the middle stump, making a series of hand signs and thought, Suetun, Sushijin, water release, water palm blade. As he channeled his chakra into his right hand as he began to change the chakra into water and solidify it into a blade shape as he ran before channeling his chakra into his legs, launching himself forward at the target post and with a slash cut the thick post in two with a horizontal slash as he sent the top half into the air as he landed, but not before turning on his heels as he weaved through a set of single hand signs, changing the water blade and made it flow fluidly as Kenta thrust his hand at the top half of the post. Suetun, Sway Ben, water release, water whip, he called out as the water flowed and lengthened, creating a whip extending from his hand and ensnaring the top half of the post as he whipped it higher into the air before the water fell apart and hit the ground. Taking a deep breath, Kenta continued the attack. Futon, Renkuden, wind release, drilling air bullet, he yelled, seeing a compressed blast of air out of his mouth, aimed for the wooded half in the air before it hit and split the log down the middle as it separated into 5 chunks as Kenta flashed through his final series of hand signs: tiger, snake, tiger, bird, tiger, ram, tiger, and narrowed his eyes on his targets before calling the final attack. Raitun Sandaburuto, lightning release, thunderbolt, In an explosion of chakra from Kenta, the air filled with sparks of electricity before Kenta thrust his hand in the direction of the still airborne pieces as an arc of lighting shot from his hand at the wood and hit the first before it jumped from one to the other in a ring of lighting as all 5 burst into flames and turning to ash before they hit the ground. Taking a breath, Kenta lowered his hand, having just run through 4 jutsu, all of which were elemental releases, as he felt the drain on his chakra after the adrenaline started to slow. Now that's more like it, Kenta said aloud, feeling pleased with himself at learning such high-level techniques. This is the kind of power I need to be able to protect my friends and to be worthy of being called student of the Hokage. Kenta thought to himself before looking to the scroll Hiruzen had given him on the advances chakra control technique. But I still have a long way to go, he thought before forming the cross sign. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he called out as 50 bunshins poofed into existence in front of him. Alright, each of you find a tree or space of water at the riverside and start chakra control lessons. I want my control improved ASAP. Got it. With a loud yell of Hi Taicho from the clones before they divided up into groups for the training, Kenta dropped to a lotus sitting position as he took out the scroll and started reading. Unbeknownst to Kenta, a figure in black with a white mask with the kanji for no was hidden in the shadows of one of the trees, sat watching, recording everything on a scroll for his report back to his master on the Uzumaki strength. He was about to move closer to see what the scroll was he was starting to read, but froze, sensing something in the area. But before he could react, a ninjato was shoved through his chest where his heart would have been, and the figure spluttered blood through the small slot in his white mask before dropping from the trees into the bushes below as a pair of Anbu shun shined beside him, one with a weasel mask with black hair holding the ninjato that had made the kill, evident from the still fresh blood on the blade. The other with a still sheathed katana on her back, wearing a cat mask and had long purple hair. Nico, report to Hokage-sama of this encounter, and inform him I will take the body to TNI. Perhaps Inoichi will be able to get something from this one. The weasel-masked Anbu ordered. The cat Anbu nodded. Hi Taicho, she said before glancing at the dead spy, and then to Kenta, who hadn't noticed them. What do you think they want with Uzumaki-san? I understand Hokage-sama's concerns, but I don't see why that old war hawk would take such an interest this early on. The weasel-masked Anbu shook his head as he lifted the scroll the spy had been documenting and glanced over its contents. It would appear they are doing recon at this point, gauging his strength. It would appear he is a possible target for recruitment that they have an eye on, he said before putting the scroll in a loop for evidence later. Given the strength he just displayed and his age, it's not surprising. He finished lifting the body over his shoulder as they disappeared into Shunshin's. Kenta blinked and looked around for a second before looking in the direction of the trees for a few seconds. I could have sworn I sensed something, Kenta thought before shrugging his shoulders and taking out a pocky stick before going back to reading the scroll. Must have just been my imagination. 12 months later. It was early morning and a now 12-year-old Kenta was sitting at his desk inside his apartment, looking over the uncountable number of papers on his desk, all with detailed notes and diagrams and Fuinjutsu arrays. On top of them was an open scroll that Kenta was scanning down, his eyes focused with a purpose. As he read, suddenly the sound of his alarm clock went off, which was sitting on the corner of his desk within arm's reach of Kenta, who continued to read for a few seconds before tapping it to turn the alarm off. Rubbing his eyes wearily, Kenta pushed back from his desk and stood up. He had grown a few more inches in the past year of training, now standing tall at 5 feet 1 inch. He stretches out his arms above his head, yawning, having awoken a few hours earlier and decided to do some work rather than sleep. Closing the scroll and gathering up the papers, he put them into the desk side drawers, which had an intricate Fuinjutsu array on the inside and a second one on the outside. As he closed the drawer and activated the protection and blood seal to keep his notes safe. Turning, he walked a few feet before turning and leaning down to a third array on the floor circling his desk and touched his as it activated the security array for his desk. The seals he had applied himself over the year he had been learning Fuinjutsu, and served to protect his work. He had taken to Fuinjutsu with a passion and learned it with ease, and even went as far to teach Naruto how to make storage scrolls and smoke tags for his pranks, since he had decided to give Naruto some light training a few months back. Naruto had been ecstatic that he could begin training, and Kenta had been more than happy to teach his Ototo some things, though Naruto had been less than ecstatic when Kenta began his tour training by means of Daijing Saban needless while running from his Nichan, who seemed to be laughing the whole time. But the training had helped him somewhat, and he learned to channel his chakra, which he had in metric shit tons. Kenta had begun his Ototo's chakra control lessons to the extent of leaf balancing and tree walking, though Naruto was struggling with both of them. Kenta refused to teach him any jutsu until he got his chakra control to a respectable level, though that hadn't stopped him progressing in the non-chakra required areas such as taijutsu and shuriken jutsu. Already being semi-dressed in his ANBU pants and a somewhat different open-top black shirt, the collar going past his collarbone showing the 5 diamond markings along it, which had been the extent of his advanced chakra training. Flashback 12 months ago. Reading through the scroll, Kenta was interested in what he was seeing. The method required picking an area of the body to focus chakra in and building the chakra up there while compressing it as small as they could through the use of chakra ink to help start the process along. Reading that most performed this technique by storing it behind their foreheads, Kenta, not being one to follow fads, opted for some place different as he took out the ink he had and opened up his flak jacket and applied the mark to his collarbone while he started focusing his chakra. Immediately the mark spread out to be the size of his fist and Kenta frowned. Looking back to the scroll, Kenta's eyes narrowed reading the notes. While the ink helps seal the chakra, there it is mean for only that purpose and will expand to show the area where the chakra is affecting. The controlled training comes from focusing the chakra in order to make the mark as small as possible, no larger than half a centimeter. Talking a meditative position, Kenta calmed his mind and focused his chakra as best he could as the mark slowly started to shrink. Flashback end. It would be several more weeks until he got the mark to the required size, and over a period of 5 months he would add 4 more marks, increasing the level of concentration required for channeling the chakra, each reserve being added to over the process of the remaining 5 months of Kenta putting in any leftover chakra at the end of the day from his already huge reserves meant the marks were filling up with abundance. Grabbing the flak jacket he had for over a year, Kenta pulled it on, leaving it open as he buttoned up the shirt to cover over the markings. Looking himself over in the mirror, Kenta smirked as he looked at what 2 years' hard training had turned him into. His figure was well-toned and evident by looking at his face. No baby fat whatsoever was visible. His face was lean, the look in his eyes was a serious one that still burned with a warm fire, the scar on his chin still prominent, only making him look more hardened and battle-born. Same with his new hairstyle. The sides of his head had been shaven short, and the top had been allowed to grow out longer, though it was in a mullet/mohawk style, but it was more shaggy and wild. Taking one last glance at himself, he smirked as he grabbed his whip sword and attached it to his waist before moving to the joining door to Naruto's apartment. Knocking on the door, Kenta called out, "Ototo, come on, it's time to get up. First day of the academy and all, don't want to miss out," he said as he started opening the door. "I've still got to go call in with Sarutobi-sensei. He said he wanted to talk to me, so I'll see you there, alright, don't be late," he said, looking around the apartment only to get a grumbled response from the bed as the covers pulled over the blonde's head. "Still tired, Nichan?" Naruto grumbled from below the covers. "Why can't the academy start at 10? Kenta's eye twitches slightly. "Because 9 gives us plenty of time to sleep and get ready, so get your butt in gear before I start using my water whip to make you," Kenta threatened as he started going through the hand signs about to make good on his threat. Hearing his older brother's words, Naruto shot out of bed and into the bathroom yelling, "I'm up, Oni-sama, please not again." The water whip had been one of the jutsu Kenta had used on Naruto in training, and the blonde hated it. Kenta chuckled seeing Naruto move at a speed that would put most ANBU to shame as he turned and walked back into his own apartment. If only it was that easy to motivate him all the time. Scene break. Hiruzen had just sat back in one of his sofas to enjoy a day of relaxing to rest his bones after a long early morning training session that he'd been doing almost every day, as he was slowly getting himself back to his former strength. As 3 Kage Bunshins worked wearily behind his desk on the paperwork with no complaints. As he was relaxing comfortably, he felt the chakra signature approaching with speed, before the window opened and Kenta appeared in a red-feathered shunshin with a smirk on his face. "Morning, Sarutobi-sensei," Kenta said with a smirk as he gave a small bow. Smiling back, Hiruzen nodded. "Good morning, Kenta-kun. I trust you're ready for your first day at the academy?" he asked, giving his student a smile. Kenta's grin widened. "Do you really need me to answer that, sensei? I've been ready for the academy for 21 months now, you know that," he said with a huge grin. Hiruzen chuckled. "Yes, I suppose so. I already know you'll be, without a doubt, the strongest in your class. So I trust one don't need to tell you not to be causing trouble," he said, giving Kenta a knowing look, making the redhead rub the back of his head sheepishly. "With your skills, no other student, and most likely the majority of the teachers, couldn't hold a candle to you." Kenta smirked. "I think that would be an understatement, sensei. I believe Anko's words were, I've got enough skill to make a Chunin look like an academy cadet, and enough chakra to make every Jonin look like a gaki crying for its mama's tit and milk," Kenta said as he tried his best not to laugh, only to blink, feeling an arm draped across his shoulder, and something sharp poke his chin. "Did I hear someone mention me?" came Anko's teasing tone, as she appeared, arm draping across Kenta's shoulder and a kunai at his cheek with a teasing smirk on her face. Kenta smirked. "Welcome back, Anko. I trust your solo mission was enjoyable," he said calmly, as if there wasn't a sharp implement ready to give him a piercing. "Also please remove the kunai. I'd hate to have to shove mine somewhere again," he said, making Anko's eyes widen as she felt something sharp poke her backside. Anko grinned. "It's getting harder and harder to sneak up on you, gaki," she said, taking away the kunai and stepped back from him as he did the same. "Like the new hair, by the way, very rugged looking. I wish I could see the Chunin senseis when they realize just how much you could kick their asses." Anko started with a grin, only for Hiruzen to clear his throat, getting both Anko and Kenta to look back to him. Anko rubbed her head sheepishly. "Sorry for the interruption, Hokage-sama," she said with a nervous chuckle. Hiruzen sighed, shaking his head before looking to Kenta again. "I assume you're still planning on hiding your real skills, Kenta, as you planned until you graduate?" Hiruzen asked, giving his student a knowing look. Kenta shrugged. "I might cut loose on my knowledge from time to time and let my taijutsu skills do my talking for me just to get them to realize I know enough, but I won't go overboard," Kenta explained as his eyes narrowed slightly as he started talking strategically. "As for my ninjutsu, I'm keeping them to myself as long as possible. I have already informed Naruto of this, so he will remain quiet, and any offers to graduate early I plan on refusing. Rookie of the Year is still my goal, but I'm sticking with Mayototo, but I'll make sure he'll be capable of looking after himself. I'm not so foolish as to hope we'll be places on the same genin team even with you as my sensei, and I won't ask you to do so. Teams are based on skills and chosen for the good of the village as a whole, so to ask for preferential treatment beyond what I've already been given would be selfish. Hiruzen smiled proudly at his adoptive grandson and student. He'd grown up wise and understood how things worked better than most his age. I'm glad to hear that, Kenta-kun. Now I plan on helping you with the graduating early part, and will keep those at bay who wish to do so with you, as I understand your reasons for doing so. I'm being lenient with you are my students, so just don't go overboard and everything will be fine. Kenta smirked. Sure thing, sensei. You've got nothing to worry about. Hiruzen smiled back. Glad to hear it. Now you'd better get going before you're late, he said with a small chuckle. Kenta just shook his head at the Hokage's hidden joke. Always the joker, sensei. I'll see you both later, he said before disappearing into a whirlwind of crimson feathers. Hiruzen chuckled. I swear that boy, he finished shaking his head in amusement. Enko chuckled. That's just the gaki being a gaki. No sense in worrying about him, he can take care of himself, she said before giving a bow and disappearing in her own shunshin as Hiruzen sighed. Yes, but that's what worries me, he said before shaking his head and taking out his little orange book to relax. Scene break. Arriving in the shadow of the trees on the academy grounds via a whirlwind shunshin so as not to attract attention, Kenta looked up at the large building before starting to make his way to the main doors in a light jog. Entering the building and following the room numbers and signs, Kenta makes his way to his classroom. He can already hear some commotion from inside. As he rounds the corner to enter the room, he blinks, seeing a crowd of students gathered at the front of the room where the commotion was as Kenta entered from the higher back end of the room, looking down on the scene. Looking down into the crowd, Kenta sighed. Class hasn't even started yet, and you're already picking a fight, Kenta thought as he looked at whom the center of attention was. Naruto, dressed in his orange and blue tracksuit, was at odds with another boy. The other boy had black hair and was wearing a blue high-collar shirt and white knee-length shorts and black shinobi sandals, and both he and Naruto were glaring at each other as they butted heads like rams. Shaking his head as he came down the steps to the front, Kenta was debating whether or not to break up the fight, when a girl with bright-colored hair caught his eye. She was wearing a knee-length cheapao dress with knee-length black skin-tight shorts and had long bright pink hair that went down to the base of her back. Deciding to find out who the other boy was first, Kenta leant on the desk behind her before speaking. What exactly is going on with those two? Kenta asked in a curious tone, trying to get information. Not looking around, still interested in the fight, the girl spoke. Oh, did you just come in? She asked, not looking still. Yeah, I was a bit late in getting up. Mind filling me in? Kenta asked, not wanting to give his actual reasoning due to him being the old man's student was still a secret with how people could see it as showing favoritism. Believing his reasoning, the girl continued. Here's what happened. We all arrived earlier than we were asked, but when that blonde baka arrived, he was all loud with everyone boasting about how he was going to be the next Hokage to be able to beat his big brother. That's when Sasuke-kun stepped in to put him in his place. The girl finished swooning slightly, mentioning Sasuke. Kenta blinked for a moment. Sasuke? Could that be? Kenta thought before speaking again. You sound like you know this Sasuke well. So who exactly is he? The girl swooned again. Oh, he's Sasuke Uchiha, the last man of the Uchiha clan. Hearing that confirmed Kenta's suspicions as he looked over the crowd at Sasuke and frowned sadly. I see, so that's Sasuke. So that's him, Kenta began to think as he remembered back several months to the morning after it all happened, the night of the Uchiha massacre.